everybody, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns, and welcome back once again to the Disney debate. We are back once again, and with me, as usual, is Kat McBerry.
It's been 87 years. And now I'm gonna be sick! But I'm happy to be back at last.
It's good to be back. You feeling good, Kat?
I've been better, honestly. It seems my uterus came down with a baby, so there's that I gotta deal with. But, you know, life will do that.
Kat, it seems that Kat is pregnant, and Doug's the father.
I know, what a concept.
I'm pregnant, and I'm the father.
That does not make sense.
Wait. Speaking of the father, how's it going, Doug?
When your writers go on strike and the actors all join in, then you get no work done for months on end.
Too true.
How you doing, soon-to-be father, Baldy McPants?
I'm doing okay. We've been waiting for this to, finally give a post-mortem on the year that was.
It's been a year. 2023 was a year.
I know, right?
There's a lot going on. It's like, just to give kind of a summation, 2023 was not great for Disney films. Thankfully, there wasn't as many quantity, but there was a lot of stinkers, and making this list was not hard, but deciding what was the bottom of the barrel, like, there was a lot.
I mean, I found a few easy to pick, but I think it was more the top ones that was a little more tough, because there was only like a few that maybe stood out, and the rest is like, well, how do I rank the level of shit with each of these? Yeah, that was not easy.
This was quite a year. I am thankful that there's less. Like, we don't have to have like a 3.5 hour podcast again. Thank you. Thank you. But, I mean, it's still 10 movies that we're going to have to rank. Next year, however, because of the writer's strike and Disney restructuring, we only currently have 5 films that are coming out, I believe.
4 to my count. And 1 technically is Fox, but, who's counting really? And anything can come out between now and the end of the year.
I mean, when it comes right down to it, like, there's Deadpool and Wolverine, there's Mufasa, there's Inside Out 2, Moana 2, and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, or whatever it is, because that's technically
God, are
Disney
we counting
now.
that? Ugh, I haven't seen this.
Have not seen a single Planet of the Apes film.
By that logic, we should include the Alien franchise and a bunch of other things that Fox is currently doing. And no offense, I don't know if I have the strength for some of those.
Yeah, probably not. So right now it's only looking like 4 films. So, like, we have a bit of a reprieve, and that will give us a chance to actually, like, A, watch more classic Disney, and B, reach our 100th episode, because we're so damn close. We are so close. I would like to be able to say that I've hit 100 episodes of something.
I can taste it. Yeah.
So close. Thank you all who have stuck with us for this long. We're gonna keep on going. But in any case, let's start off with our movies. We have 10 to discuss today, and we're gonna go in release order. Phil thought they were Kat's list, and I was just like, nah.
Oh God, no. Some of these, no, I would never put them in certain orders. And just as a caution per usual, there are going to be spoilers, as we are going to discuss a lot of things with these movies, because some of the spoilers are just impossible not to talk about. Let's be fair.
Yeah, some of it we kind of have to talk about. One thing that I have been doing since I started 2024 is I've actually written down my opinions and thoughts on Letterboxd and started live tweeting as I go, just to help me get an easier idea of how I feel about certain things. So if you really want, like, spoiler-free stuff, go to Letterboxd, check out the Bun Squad there. That's my stuff. Otherwise, check us out here. With that being said, the first one that came out was was Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. And, oh boy, what a start.
The movie that made you
Phil actually
the movie that made you not want to watch any other movies for the rest of 2023.
Yeah, it did. And like I really want to apologize both to Kat and to Doug because in July, around July, Phil came over to do stuff with us after we went to California, and we watched it together. And I said after I watched it, I'm glad that I saw this on Disney Plus because that sucked. And I don't want to see anything else because I was just like, oh my god. I personally have Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania at number 10. It is the worst on my list. I hated it.
Yeah, I'm not as cruel as you are because I personally think there are other films we've seen that are far worse, but I will admit it was not very good, especially in terms of the other Ant-Man movies, so I put it at number 7.
Okay. I put it at number 6.
Number 6, okay.
Yeah.
For me, this was an experience. Like, my big thing is, I'm a huge fan of Ant-Man. I loved the first one. I was a staunch defender of the second one. But this felt like two movies crammed together, and it was tonal whiplash. It spent the first half of the movie not explaining much. And then it over-explains, but the second half is so campy and weird. And normally I like that, because I like camp. But there are some parts where, like, Giant Man was just saying, Kang, we had a deal! And I'm just like, he's evil! What do you expect? He's evil! Like, this, Darth Vader altered the bargain. You gotta trust Darth Vader?
It's like, why are you doing this? Why? Because I'm a villain. That's plain and simple.
Are you gonna wash your hands?
No.
Because I'm evil.
Oh, Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the weakest of the Ant-Man films. A lot of that, I think, is lack of, say, Luis, Michael Pena.
Michael Pena needs to narrate the entire MCU.
Absolutely.
Of course, yeah. But yeah, and I mean, again, you're kind of throwing Ant-Man, who's kind of more the, comedic villain, into something that's really supposed to be more of a heavy hitter, and it just doesn't really work as much. And then, yeah, you kind of threw a lot of BS, like you had, what's his name from the first movie wound up living and becoming MODOK.
Yellow Jacket was his villain name, and
he's
Yellow
not
Jacket
even really that.
He becomes MODOK, and that makes no sense.
And like Michael Douglas is basically he's had enough of the MCU. He wants to be killed off already. So he's kind of not having a good time. And then you have like really dumb things like that Bill Murray cameo, which honestly, if you took that out of the movie, you wouldn't miss a thing. It just completely, just doesn't need to be there.
From what I read, he personally asked to be put in the movie, and they made that role up just for him. Because he's Bill Murray. How could you say no to Bill Murray?
I can say no to Bill Murray. Don't do Garfield, Bill Murray.
He needs to be told no a lot more. But, I mean, honestly, on the other hand, it's, there's still fun to be had. I think there's, like, the thing where where Ant-Man and Wasp are kind of, like, becoming multiple versions of themselves to the point where you even see like a version of Scott where he works for Baskin Robbins. I mean, there's still some good stuff in there. It's still got action, and it's a Marvel movie. It's got stuff that you could still watch it. It was not unwatchable. I do think it is undercut, though. I think they probably should have let Scott and Hope stay behind at the end, and they're maybe make that a thing for the upcoming phase where they're trying to get him out of the quantum realm. But, nonetheless, it's ultimately harmless. Granted, though, with the whole Jonathan Majors thing, that's a little harder to overlook. Honestly, I
mean,
think,
with the actress that plays the Wasp, and
she's got her thing with QAnon.
That
like there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and it's hard for a lot of these actors. And I love the actor who plays Ant-Man. I forget name.
Paul Rudd.
Name. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is great.
Yes.
It's just like you have a tonal whiplash between two different feels of a movie. It's a comedy butting against a serious drama that could work, but like half of the movie is set in the quantum realm where they're they're not explaining anything. And I kept saying to myself, if this was here the whole time, why didn't they mention it? And they keep not saying Kang's name, and I'm like, he's not Voldemort.
We've already seen him in Loki, for crying out loud.
Well, to be fair, they did the reason that they didn't mention the quantum realm was because Hope's mother, Janet, purposely didn't talk about it. And it's because of all the stuff that she learned, by virtue of associating with Kang. And she probably thought, well, there's no sense in freaking people out about a threat that's microscopic, let's just let sleeping dogs lie. I mean, it's not like she ever expected to go back to the quantum realm. So I can kind of...
True, but when they go back, you would expect she'd at least explain some things.
Well, she does during that whole ride between locations. She explains what happened, but I mean, again, at the time it wasn't really relevant. Yes, it would have been nice if she said something before they got sucked in because they had the chance to, but whatever. I mean, really, the only reason this exists is to basically give Janet more of a starring role. Because she appeared in the last Ant-Man movie for 5 seconds, and before that was even less.
And they got blipped.
Yeah. So I mean, at least it gives her a spotlight because after all, Janet Van Dyne, she is a major player in the Marvel comics and other properties. So it would make sense to give her more of a spotlight, especially now that her daughter's the one that's taken over the role of Wasp. So, I don't mind that because I love seeing Michelle Pfeiffer in movies. She's still a fantastic actress. It's just everything else about this just doesn't work. The whole conflict they give Scott and his daughter because suddenly he's not a good superhero anymore because he's a sellout, and she's going through her, rebellious phase where she's messing with cops, and then we have the whole thing with, it turns out Janet was borking Kang while she was down there, and Bill Murray and whoever the hell else was down there. And it's on the one hand, Kang's trying to bring a seriousness to the whole situation because, he is a conqueror, an intergalactic conqueror. But then at the same time, you're pitting up against a comic relief hero, and then they're just making jokes around all of this serious stuff going on. And then you throw MODOK in there on top of everything else. It's bloated and it doesn't make sense. It's such tonal whiplash.
Yeah, and that's a very bad MODOK. Look, I saw the first season of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. MODOK was great in that. Here, what did they do to you, man?
I mean, to be fair, MODOK is a very tough... I mean, to be fair, MODOK is a very tough villain to incorporate, especially in the MCU, which is trying to ground itself more in reality than anything else. He's definitely one of those intergalactic type villains where, be better more suited to either Thor or Guardians of the Galaxy or something. So to include him, on Earth, especially with Ant-Man of all heroes, it's just odd. But I guess that was the only way they could see it working. It's I guess what they tried to do with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, it's well, obviously we can't incorporate this racial stereotype into this situation, so we're just going to go in a whole different direction and hope people don't get pissed off about it.
It's I'm not pissed off that they changed something. I'm pissed off that they turned him into half a baby and, redeemed him at the end. I am not a dick. That was so dumb. No, the whole reason why you're down here is because you were a villain, and I have so many problems. I would be here all day.
No, I hear you. And actually, I found in my research possibly 2 explanations for why this came off as bad as it did. Sorry. Excuse me. One is the fact that this is the first Ant-Man movie that Paul Rudd did not co-write, which I think is very telling, because, you know, it helps to have your lead star, who's a comedian, like, help with the tone of the film. And you know, it kind of shows in the first 2. In this one, it's kind of glaring that the humor is not hitting like it used to. And then the second issue is that when Disney was deciding how to budget between Marvel films, you know, which one should they pour more money into, they pretty much took a majority of their effects budget and gave it to Wakanda Forever and took it away from Ant-Man. So it kind of explains why some things don't look that good, especially MODOK.
And, like, to an extent, look, Wakanda Forever is one of my favorite movies ever in the MCU. I understand putting more budget into that because, like, there's a lot riding on it. But you could have delayed this movie?
Honestly, the movie was delayed. You know, between the pandemic and, like, the strike and everything, it kept getting delayed.
It was not a good movie. I put it on my last simply because, like, it was fun to riff on, but it wasn't a fun time. I had to keep pausing it. Like, there are certain things I'm just like, what? I'm sorry, what? Especially when you have this whole other world, it just does not look right. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I just wonder how this is going to fit in continuity-wise, especially if they're writing Kang out of the MCU altogether. Because I heard they're not even going to bother to recast him. They're just going to erase him entirely. So it's like, this movie technically has no consequence then, when you think about it.
Yeah, that's kind of stupid.
Like, the only thing...
Never mind that he's got all these variants, so any one of them could be played by different actors, but no.
Yeah, like, that's one thing. It's just like, you have the TVA. You could do anything you want, but, you know.
I mean, the only thing it really does is introduce Cassie as a young adult now, and I mean, she is going to be in the Young Avengers, so at least there's that. But yeah, I think that's it as far as Ant-Man films go, because really, what else can they do with it? You know, aside from kill off Hank Pym, which is what he really wants to happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's great as Hank Pym, but I mean, when you get to a certain age, you're just, you know, I'm done. Anything else, Doug?
No, I agree with you.
All right, let's move on to our second movie that came out. I have quite a bit more positive things to say about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, before we get into, like, my thoughts and the rankings and whatnot, I do want to say, before watching this, you should watch the holiday special. I did watch it before this. Kevin Bacon is amazing in it.
Yes.
And Kevin Bacon.
You can't outrun me, Bacon! Just brief thoughts on that holiday special. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but, like, I think it was, as far as holiday specials go, it's average. The middle half was a bit longer than I would have expected with Drax and Mantis. I think it overall was very funny and very good, and it gave me one of my favorite new songs. But I personally ranked it at, like, middle of the road, 3 stars. It's a lot of fun. It establishes a lot for the Guardians of the Galaxy. But, like, the middle bit I thought was a little bit longer than it needed to be. Kat.
Oh yeah, I love the holiday special, and I speak as someone who is not a big Guardians fan to begin with, but I had so much fun with it, and yeah, like you said, I love the music in it as well. Like, continuity-wise, it only offers, like, one thing, but yeah, like, I don't know why. I watched it the first time, and then Christmas came around, and I watched it again, and I still very much enjoyed it. Like, it gives you what you want, just, like, goofy, over-the-top, like, nonsense. And it's like, you know, you're seeing Drax at his most Drax, and then you have the perk of seeing Kevin Bacon. It's just, to me, it's a delight, and I wouldn't mind watching that every Christmas.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon as himself, and his wife as herself in the film. It's pretty fun. Doug?
Yeah, I agree with Kat. I enjoyed the Christmas special way more than I thought I would, because, yeah, much like Kat, I didn't care much for the Guardians in particular, Peter Quill, but have like the other, members of the cast. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I think the choice to have it be mostly Drax and Mantis was probably the best way to go, because they are just delightful and they are just having a whole lot of fun, getting up to all sorts of shenanigans in it. And yes, the songs in it, immediately downloadable. They've become part of my annual playlist. And I think also it doesn't really, it only has like the one thing going, continuity wise into the third movie, though I'm pretty sure they must have shot it at the same time as they were doing volume 3, because they have, the same nowhere set and everything. So
yeah.
There
are a couple plot points. I mean, like, first of all, the Guardians have bought Nowhere from the Collector. So first of all, it retcons that the Collector is still alive, because we weren't sure what happened to Nowhere.
I mean, I thought he was alive. I mean, not that they made it totally clear, but I thought he was alive. Like, one of the creators said he was.
Yeah, the biggest problem I have with Infinity War, that I'm like, watching it back then, I liked it, but like, they are very vague about who survived where. And especially when it comes to what happened with Thor's planet, it took them forever for that. It happened with Nowhere and the Collector. It's like, I want to know. And granted, you have a little bit more time, but like, I feel like that was a big loss. And so the Collector's alive. They brought Nowhere from the Collector, but also they bring up that Mantis is Quill's sister, and that's a big part of the special as well.
Which makes sense when you think about it. I mean, why else would Ego keep her alive? Why would he have her in the first place if she, wasn't one of his? And I mean, the fact that she has the power to, like, basically humble a god, really says something.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, like, those three are the main points you watch it for, but for me, it was, the Christmas song. It's right up there next to, like, The Night Santa Went Insane and Christmas at Ground Zero. Like, I don't know what Christmas is, but It's Christmas Time is one of my favorite songs. It is surprisingly accurate, even though it's not.
Yeah, I'd repeat the lyrics, but I don't want to get copyright
strike. It's like, it sounds ridiculous, but then it's like you think, yeah, it is kind of ridiculous.
So, like, yeah, there's just some ridiculous elements, and it's just like, okay. And they got an old school band for it, so that was fun. Mm-hmm. Anyway, moving on to 99. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I have this at number 1.
I have it at number 1 as well.
I also have it at number 1.
Yay, we agree.
For me, for the first time, we all agree. I sat down and, like, recently watched through all the Guardians of the Galaxy's films in preparation for this, including the holiday special and this movie with owls. It was weird. It's a weird sequel. Wouldn't recommend it. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, to me, is the best one. I think they only get better as they go on. But the thing with, Guardians 1 is good, but I feel like certain things haven't aged as well. Like, I didn't like the villain and stuff like that. But as you go, 2 improves in a lot of areas, and 3 takes what worked about 2, and it just makes you cry. It is so intense. I sobbed so many times. But I had to keep pausing the movie. Just so fair warning, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 does have animal abuse. That's part of why it took me a bit. And the day that I saw it, I had a nightmare about losing my cat. So it hit extra hard.
Yeah.
But it's still so damn good. It still has the humor. It still has the heart, but it dials it up. And I'm going to say right now, the High Evolutionary is my favorite villain in the MCU, because not only is he fun to see destroyed, but he's he's one of those villains that like he's quotable and he's such a like weird combination of pathetic and terrifying because he's able to take out Adam Warlock with no issues. There's just something so insanely terrifying about his introduction and how he makes the queen from the second movie like into like a little child when he talks to her, and it's just like, wow. So yeah, this was fantastic. Kat.
Yeah, like you said, the movies keep getting better because, again, my biggest issue with Guardians, at least in the first movie, is that they try to make them out to be, you know, this team that become the best of friends and even a surrogate family. But you don't get the sense of any of that in the first movie. In fact, a lot of them have radically different reasons for doing what they do and going against the villain, and it makes you think, why are these people even working together? Like, clearly they want different things and they have different ways of getting about to doing it. Like, each of these characters could be stars of their own individual films. Like, there's really no reason for them to be together. And granted, they work on that in 2, and it gets better. At least you have a sense that they're at least friends now. But it's 3 is where you actually feel they're more of a family. That they truly do care about each other and will go to any lengths to save each other. That's where I feel like 3 shines the most. Like, it makes you feel for the characters that they really are a solid unit now. They're not just a bunch of strangers working together toward an obscure goal. And yeah, like I said, I especially hate, like Doug, I especially hate Peter Quill as Star-Lord. He annoys me in almost every single film he's in. But he's gotten more tolerable, and Volume 3 is probably the most tolerable he's been out of all the movies, especially since he's not the star per se. Because, you know, let's face it, Rocket's the star of this movie, and they focus on others, but his story has less impact than the others. So the fact that they have him not being as obnoxious, like, I appreciate that a lot more. I still didn't like his whole thing with Gamora, the fact that he kept trying to push for a romance that obviously was not going to happen, but at least it wasn't as bad as it would have been in the first 2 films.
I think his acting has gotten a lot better. There's a scene where we think we lose Rocket, and his, like, the way he like, sobbed, like, I think Chris Pratt does a fantastic job dealing with grief and with loss. Mm-hmm. Granted, I loved his trauma dumping personally, especially with Gamora in the elevator, because she's not the same person, and he has to grow and realize that. But at the same time, like, it's like, you became a dick, and Nebula's just like, yeah, that was basically the gist of it. And I'm like, yeah, you died and came back a dick.
I mean, let's be fair here. Like, personally, I never believed Peter Quill and Gamora as a couple. Like, it makes no sense that those 2 people would be a couple at all. Like, maybe in a sexual sense, but as an actual, like, authentic couple that cares about each other, I just don't buy it. I never bought it. So the fact that Peter gets so torn up over her death in Infinity War, that always kind of baffled me. And I always attribute it to the fact that, well, he gets clingy to whoever he's emotionally attached to by virtue of having lost his mother. But yeah, here it's like really obvious that those 2 have no reason to be together. And I'm glad that they didn't make it so that she falls in love with him again. Because again, Gamora I like. She's a decent character, but she doesn't really have a place in the Guardians because her backstory, her motivations, everything is so vastly different from the rest of the Guardians, especially Peter Quill. So yeah, I definitely am glad they did not rekindle that romance, because this film would be lower on the list than it is now.
And Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, basically, I'm with Kat on a lot of that. Like, Guardians was, like, next to Iron Man 3 originally, it was probably the one I hated the most out of all the MCU stuff. I felt like it's that, like, friend that you have that thinks they're a lot funnier than they are. Maybe occasionally they get, you know, a couple good one-liners in or something that make you chuckle. But on the whole, it's like, it's cringe to watch. I think Guardians 2, I disliked Guardians 1 so much that I did not go to see the second one when it was in theaters, but I did later wind up watching it, I think in the lead up to Infinity War, and it is a lot better. I think that's pretty much where, Guardian shines, is when they like pull back and actually add some genuine sincerity and, character development. It's like, okay, now I don't hate Peter Quill as much. He's actually genuinely a good character. And then, of course, Infinity War goes and ruins that good grace. But,
I like Infinity War, and I stand by his decision. I get why you don't, but personally, I'm a big fan of Star-Lord, and I mean, that's the kind of character he is. I like it.
But in general, yeah, I like the ensemble. I too do not see the romance between Gamora and Quill. That just felt so forced. And of course, like Kat, I was also very annoyed by how he was treating the alternate Gamora and trying to like, yell at her in nonsense to basically be the Gamora that I wanted. But at least, he finally does come to his senses and realize, yeah, my Gamora is gone. This, is a different person. I'll have to live with that. But yeah, and then of course, just always the ensemble of the Guardians is just the best. And I always liked Drax, and I always liked Groot and Rocket. And of course, to get Rocket's backstory in this, it's quite emotional and a little uncomfortable when you learn what happens with him. And it's probably like the worst villain in terms of like, oh, I hate this guy. I hate this guy. This guy should die. But it's
I wanted to punch him in many ways.
You hate them
he
because
finally got the entire Guardian team to beat his ass. I was like, yeah.
You hate him because the actor is that good at making him that despisable.
Yeah, I will say I give kudos to both the actor as well as James Gunn for making the decision to have the villain not be sympathetic at all in terms of his portrayal, because they agreed that Marvel's already kind of gone that route, both with Thanos and with Loki and a few other villains. They just wanted to make this guy just unrepentantly evil. And given Disney's tendencies to not want to go in that direction anymore, I can respect that. We need just purely evil people. And how much more evil can you get than somebody who experiments, abuses, and kills animals? Like, that is one of the ultimate evils right there. Not to mention he blows up an entire planet of his own creations.
He's a genocidal maniac. He's worse than Thanos, because Thanos at least let half of them survive. Mm-hmm. That's not a compliment, by the way. But like, the thing I like about him, and it was funny because like you start out and the scenes he has with Rockets, the first two scenes with past Rocket, you start off thinking like, oh, this guy's wholesome. He's gonna have Rocket help him out with the experiment and blah blah blah. And then you see the real him. And he's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna incinerate the batch. You were never gonna be part of the new world. Also, I'm taking your brain, and you couldn't understand that. And like, I love how he devolves the more the film goes on into crazed. There are so many scenes where like there's a scene where he goes to Rocket in his cage and he puts his hand towards him and he looks so crazed out of his mind. It's like, how did you know? And I'm just like, God, it's so good. Because he's like a teenager throwing a temper tantrum, and yet he's the one who's in charge.
Yeah, I admit, like, there were times I thought he was a little too over the top, like, he might be compensating a little bit, but it's better than, like, those bland, boring villains we've been getting lately that, like, have no personality whatsoever. At least this guy's emoting and, like, showing you his crazy. Then I just love how he goes from like looking like a regular guy to looking to like RoboCop and then looking like Red Skull. It's just you see him just get more monstrous as the film goes on. It gets so gross, but it's so cool.
The monster on the outside is finally showing what he is on the inside, and just it's so good. One final thing that I want to note for this film is I just love the environmental design. Like I love the Guardians movies have always been colorful, but like when you get into like the organic biolab that's made of like an actual creature and it's all like sanitized and like all the planets have different lighting, and then you have Counter Earth, which is such a cool concept. Just this movie, there's so much to say. I said more in my Letterboxd. It's my top for a reason. It made me sob. Go see it.
And you want to know the irony of this? This movie almost didn't get made because Disney insisted on firing James Gunn for some things he said decades ago before he even worked for the company, which he apologized profusely for and didn't try to excuse himself from. And despite all the public support, they still wouldn't hire him back. And they were trying to pawn off his project on other directors who would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. And the only thing that changed their mind was him getting hired by their rival company, Warner Brothers, to direct Suicide Squad. And it was only after he started that Disney's like, hey, we want you back. Well, guess what? Out of all the movies we talked about this year or are gonna talk about, Guardians 3 is the only Disney product that actually made them a profit in 2023. Wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Just, Guardians 3 is so good. Go see it. Don't see the Owl movie. Doug, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this a lot, more than I thought I would. I was, like, half wanting them to kill off Peter Quill, but at the same time, they kept, having Mantis, like, say, hey, you should really see your grandpa. You should really see your grandpa. So I'm like, no, they can't kill him. But, there's definitely something to be said where, like, most of these films, they'll just ultimately, like, kill off the person, just to have them have their finale. There's something to be said for just, letting a franchise kind of come to the eventual end, even if it's not technically the end, but like letting the heroes kind of ride out off into the sunset, and then maybe they return, in some other media later. But if not, hey, they get to do whatever they want.
I one final thing I will say, I do like the second Guardians team that they bring up. Cosmo's a good dog. Kraglin is pretty funny. And I like what they do to kind of build a future Guardians team. So that was pretty good. All right. Next one, it's time to go into less than stellar territory, but not super bad. So next was Peter Pan and Wendy, and personally I have this at number 5.
I have it at number 6.
Number 8? Number 8?
Yeah.
Number 8?
So we had different opinions. My initial thoughts was, I was expecting to not like this. I think it's pretty high end. Like, it's not middle. It's just above middle of the road. It's not bad. I liked a lot of the decisions, and I think for a film that was, mostly about Wendy, I think it did a pretty good job with these characters. There are some decisions I didn't agree with, and I think ultimately in taking out some of the racist elements, they didn't know what to do with those characters, and so they're just kind of there. And it's just like, yeah, I'm glad we got rid of the racism, but now you gotta put something new in. But it humanizes Hook in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I think, is it Dustin Hoffman? No, not Dustin Hoffman.
It's Jude Law.
Jude Law did a great job as Hook. Not as good as Dustin Hoffman did, but Jude Law was great. Overall, I had fun with a large portion of it. I like the fight scenes. I like the visuals. Surprisingly, I like the actor for Pan. I think overall it was pretty good. It just, they didn't have a lot to add back into the film, so parts of it were just like, been there, done that. Doug, what do you think?
It's very middle of the road for me. Very, it's okay. It's mostly harmless. It pretty much retells, the story. I do like that they actually had representation for was it somebody with Down syndrome was playing one of the Lost Boys?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I was very much, in appreciation of that. I think there should be more of that. What'd you call it? I did not like Jude Law. I don't like Jude Law in a lot of things. And I felt like here it's like, on the one hand, yeah, you could argue that he doesn't have to be like the cartoon version, but I wish he would give me something. Because he just felt so blah. I'm like, yeah, there is that, bit of sympathy to him, whatever, but I'm just like, he doesn't emote very much. He doesn't do much of anything. I don't really buy him at all as a threat. And honestly, like, a lot of this movie, I just kind of forget happened. Just, yeah, that's really all I can say about it.
Kat?
Yeah, this was a weird one for me, because, I tend to judge a lot of live action pretty harshly, especially in correlation to how I felt about the original. And for starters, the original Peter Pan, not really my favorite. Like, I like it, but it obviously has problems, and it's not aged well, especially in certain contexts. So seeing how they adapted the live action, I felt they made a lot of improvements, but also there was downgrades as well. Going off what Doug said, like, I didn't think Jude Law was that bad. I think portraying a more humbler, more complex version of Hook, he actually did decent. I do feel he could have maintained some of his original, like, swagger, his original pompousness. He's like that captain that tries to show that he's more of a badass than he actually is. And I mean, I've seen other iterations. Like, I remember seeing that one Peter Pan movie with Jason Isaacs. I thought he was a fantastic Hook. So, yeah, Jude Law kind of pales in comparison. But again, I like the whole take that, big twist. It turns out Hook actually was a former Lost Boy. He was actually Peter Pan's best friend. But after a certain point, he wanted to go look for his mother, and Peter resented him for that. And unfortunately, he never found his mother, and he got picked up by pirates, and now he's a bad guy. And I'm glad that they stuck with that by showing that, he's not completely redeemable. He's still a bad person regardless, because by virtue of the fact he's still trying to kill children. But you see there's more complexity to that, and I'm honestly glad that they're showing Peter Pan for what he really is. He's a little jerk. He's a little brat. I mean,
yeah.
He chopped off Hook's hand and fed it to a crocodile. How much more of a jerk can you be than that? So I'm glad that they didn't shy away from that at all. I still think there are things that they could have done much better. Obviously, John and Michael really have no reason to be in the story. Like, they didn't have any reason to be in the original. Like, at least they had them do more in the original. But here, it's like, they're just extras. Like, you could just bring Wendy alone, and it would change or add nothing to the story. And
Tiger Lily, well, she has a badass scene with an axe. She's really only there to save Peter Pan, because they almost kill Peter Pan.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. They were trying not to portray, the Native Americans too much, not trying to show them as any stereotypes. They were trying to show Tiger Lily not being purely a damsel in distress who, worships Peter Pan. But at the same time, it's like she doesn't really have that much personality, and she doesn't have that much purpose in the plot. I mean, the whole reason he saves her is that so that she becomes a protector of the Lost Boys, and they fight against the pirates before they're eventually kidnapped. It just, I don't know. It just, again, reduces her role, and it doesn't add much. At least in the other Peter Pan movies, she had more of a presence. It just, I just don't get it. And then the crocodile. Oh my god, they did the crocodile so dirty. He appears in one scene. Only one scene. Like, you ask anybody what's the most memorable thing they remember about Peter Pan aside from the character himself. You remember the crocodile. You think of Captain Hook and you think of the crocodile.
To be fair, the scene with the crocodile is really funny when they use that music with the slow-mo.
No, I agree. That scene, like, and it was brutal too because they show him eating the other pirates. I'm like, shit, dude. Yeah, this crocodile's merciless. But it's just the one scene. At least in the original, they show him at the beginning with Hook to establish their dynamic, and then they show him afterwards at the climax because he's always that lingering threat, the one that Hook threatens to feed the children to. But you never see him again. And it's like, you have this giant freaking crocodile. Use it. Like, poor TikTok.
Yeah. And I will say another annoying thing is Wendy's conflict with Peter sometimes is a bit forced.
Yeah.
There are times where she's just like, I'm gonna be against you. And it's like, yeah, I get Peter's a dick, but he doesn't do anything.
Yeah. No, that was another issue I had too with Wendy. It's like, they try to make her the typical strong, independent woman, but that's not who Wendy is. Like, in the story, she's a girl who's on the cusp of puberty. She's at the age where, like, she wants to still keep doing kid stuff, but she's being pushed more into being an adult. And I mean, this is at a period of time where it was one or the other. You were either a child or you were an adult. There was no teenager era in between to ease yourself into that. But here, it's like, they make the conflict more about her not being able to do stuff because she's a girl, even though she knows how to do stuff that girls in that era really shouldn't know how to do. Like, who taught her how to sword fight? Like, I'd like to know that.
At the same time, like, while I do see all these problems, I liked that it was more involving, like, more than the original. It's about Wendy growing up, and it's like she initiates this whole thing because she doesn't want to grow up, and she calls Peter Pan there. And there are certain parts of and aspects of the movie that I think do improve it. I think, Jude Law's no Dustin Hoffman. It's not as good as the Robin Williams Hook. But I think this feels a lot like a prequel to that. I know it's probably not. Mm-hmm. Different timelines, but it definitely felt like they were going more with that type of hook. And there are just certain changes that I feel work. It just, for all the things that they changed and took out, they didn't add a lot for the extended cast to do. And the Lost Boys don't do anything.
No. And actually they added Lost Girls, which I kind of feel conflicted about. Because it's like, yes, they're incorporating boys and girls, but the whole reason why in the original novel that Jim Barry says why there's no girls in the Lost Boys is because girls are too clever to fall out of their strollers. So it's actually a praise for girls. Like, they're not stupid enough to get lost like that. So for them to, like, add girls in, it's like, well, I guess now we can say that girls are equally stupid to boys? Okay, I guess.
Equal rights, yay!
Yay.
I'm conflicted on this. Like, I don't think this is a bad movie. It's not middle of the road for me. I put it at number 5 because I think if a few rewrites could have really helped and made it, like, great. But, like, it as is, it's pretty good. It's not, like, it's nothing special, but I think it's definitely something to recommend personally.
I mean, the thing that really knocks it down for me is the cinematography. Like, everything just looks so dull. Like, you compare the colorfulness of Neverland from the original and even other adaptations, and this one is just lacking so much in vibrancy and color and everything. Heck, Tinkerbell doesn't even glow. And the director actually said, well, I didn't think that made sense. I'm like, she's a fairy / pixie. Pixies glow. Why is that a hard thing to understand?
Yeah, it's a very muted film. It's not as bad as Pan, but it is very muted. And speaking to Tinkerbell, there's a whole thing in this where they only are able to hear when they listen. But, like, Peter Pan's not listening to her, so they make it like a whole, like, person of color women's rights thing. And I'm all for having a person of color as Tinkerbell. I have no problem with that. But it just feels a little bit weird when the only person who turns out to be able to hear her at the end of the film is Wendy, when Peter has known her far longer, and like it feels like a forced message to me.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And like, first of all, there are other colored people as fairies. If you watch the Tinkerbell series, there are other fairies of different nationalities, so it exists. But the thing is,
Yeah,
like,
it's fine. It just, like, putting those two things together, like...
But the thing is, like, the fairies, you know, they're really tiny and they have their own language, so you'd have to really connect with them in order to actually understand them, because canonically, nobody outside the fairies can really communicate with them. So, yeah, them doing that whole thing, and then the fact that they just made her so bland, it's like, the original Tinkerbell, she was passionate, she was jealous, she was angry, like, she was basically a diva. And it's like, yes, I guess I know they didn't want to make her, like, the jealous girlfriend type, especially to someone who's supposed to be, 10 or 12 years old, but at least she had character. Like, this new Tinkerbell didn't have any character. Like, half the time I forgot she was there.
In trying to update it, they pushed it too far to where they actually regressed it. And here's the thing. You can put a person of color in a film and make it work. I think it worked in Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the Blue Fairy worked in Pinocchio because they understood the character. They did what they were trying to do. And here they flew too close to the sun with that message, I think. But any final thoughts before we move on?
I just wanted to add something for you, Zen, because this will probably piss you off. The person that directed this was the same person who directed the live-action version of Pete's Dragon. So.
Oh, God.
And remember what a bland, boring mess that was? It explains why this one is like that.
Yeah, that does explain a lot. Oh, God.
But yeah.
Doug, anything to add?
I've already forgotten the movie.
Honestly, I don't think it's that bad. I've seen other worse films. Like, the movie Pan is bad. That is an example of a horrible Peter Pan film.
Yeah, Pan is bad.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's great, not on the line with Hook or anything, not even with the original, but it's better than it has any right to be. And I mean, you're going to compare it with the other Peter Pan live action, but again, it's not atrociously bad. It's just a little underwhelming, and it could have been better.
It could have been better. I was pleasantly surprised because I was expecting to hate it, but it's nothing super to write home about. All right, moving on to the the fourth film that came out in 2023, The Little Mermaid, a live-action 2023. I'm just going to put it down here, number 8.
Number 8.
Number 7.
Okay, so to me, The Little Mermaid is the very definition of middle of the road. Because on the one hand, I do like what they did with some songs. Halle Bailey did a great job. And I think, the voice cast who they got to sing, I mean, they got, what's his name from Hamilton?
Lin-Manuel Miranda?
No, not Lin-Manuel. The guy who was...
Sebastian?
Yeah, Sebastian.
Daveed Diggs.
Yeah, Daveed Diggs from Hamilton. And he does a great job. Awkwafina's a little bit awkward in some scenes, but I like her as Scuttle because Scuttle's supposed to be awkward. Like, they have good casting choices. But for every good choice, there's a bad choice. And it's like, the underwater filter is so murky that you can't see the colors in any of the scenes. It's supposed to be a visual marvel, and I'm like, no, I'd rather be on land. They add a subplot with Prince Eric that kind of goes nowhere, and then they add a subplot about how shipwrecks are humans' faults, and they hate humans for wrecking ships. And it's just... and Prince Eric's mother is still alive in this version, and she's like, oh, those sea devils are out to get us, and... like, for every good decision, there's a bad decision. And the worst decision... Look, Lin-Manuel Miranda, I love you. I love you very much, but you flew too close to the sun.
And the son's name was Alan Menken.
we flew too close with the Remember the Swamp song. The Scuttlebutt is the name of the song. Have you heard the Scuttlebutt? And it's like, you made Aquafina sing.
Oh, God.
It's like, it's awful.
I think that makes my number one cringe moment out of everything we've watched this year. Like, more cringe than MODOK. That was, like, the worst.
Yeah, that was just cringe when I heard, remember the swamp? When I went womp, womp, womp. And, like, to me, this is so bad it's amazing because, like, it starts off with, like, the worst lyrics and stuff, but then Daveed Diggs brings in some of his amazing rap chops, so it actually goes from, like, so bad it's amazing to kind of good and then back to bad. It's so weird.
Oh, God. Yeah, this is what's the term? Like, this is an example of too many cooks spoil the broth. In which case, you had two people of amazing musical talent, but with vastly different styles, working together to create these songs that really shouldn't exist because, you know, the Broadway version does. You could have just borrowed from that. And the songs are either underwhelming or absolute cringe. And that has to be the worst example. Like, I don't get why they are making Scuttle sing. I didn't like when they made Scuttle sing in the Broadway version, and I resented the fact that they gave Aquafina, who really does not have a good singing voice, these extra songs and inclusion in other songs to sing with her very raspy voice. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's like,
Scuttle did sing in the original, but they shut him up.
Well, it's a shame because the original voice actor, Buddy Hackett, he could sing. You know, remember the Music Man? The whole song Shaboopy? That was him. He can sing, but he doesn't have his own song in The Little Mermaid. Oh, but no, we're going to give Scuttle 2 songs in the Broadway version that have nothing to do with anything and are not that good. And we're going to give the live-action version just all of these horrible songs and add all these lines to these songs they have no reason to be a part of. None of it makes sense to me.
They change certain lines, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I didn't mind the change, but, like, a lot of the updates just change the tone of it. Like, they change some of Ursula's song lines, and I'm just like, the whole point of Ursula is that she's saying up there, men don't like a lot of blather. Like, they take all that out. And
yeah, we're trying to, like, apply to more modern sensibilities, and I guess the fact that she was going toward the whole, oh, men are just naturally misogynistic, so you'll be fine if you don't speak. I guess they wanted to steer away from that. That's my guess.
And it's like, in doing so, in trying to make it in trying to make it more progressive, you've regressed it in such a huge way, because I don't know why people keep reevaluating in this and saying that, oh, it's not that great a movie. The whole point of the original Little Mermaid, and we haven't talked about it on the show, and I can't wait to, is that the human world is what enamors Ariel, not because of the guy. Like, if you listen to the song, she's like, I have all the stuff from the human world, but I want knowledge. I want to know. I want to be where the people are, and she wants equal rights for women. That's legitimately in the song. And, like,
I want to hoard everything.
It's just, yeah. It feels like they're pulling back. And in pulling back, they took out the message of the film in a big way. And it's like, I like Halle Bailey, but, like, the underwater scenes look a bit weird. Under the Sea was pretty good. But then they add all the songs for Prince Eric, and I'm like, it feels like I'm in Mamma Mia.
Yeah, a little bit. It feels like Greece, even though it's supposed to be the Caribbean.
Yeah. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously, there's been all that, talk around that I've gotten so sick of. Halle Bailey was not at all the problem with this movie. Everybody, you have Prince Eric, he's pretty cool. Daveed Diggs is okay. Aquafina's fine as Scuttle. Just ignore the scuttlebutt rap.
But have you heard the scuttlebutt?
No, I don't want to. But then it's like, it's that same problem they have, remaking all these Disney films as live action, that they mostly lose the whimsy, or in some places completely altogether. And then, I thought I was very disappointed in Javier Bardem as Triton, and with Melissa McCarthy as Ursula, because both of them are just so subdued. Where, like,
they phoned it in.
Yeah, Javier Bardem, he's supposed to be like very imposing. He's exactly what we'd be looking for Triton. But then when he like actually gets in and performs it, it's like he's just kind of just drifting around, not really getting angry or anything. It's like he gets pissed off at Ariel for having all the human stuff and disregarding her, and he just like very gently uses his Triton to like blast stuff. It's like, wow, I don't believe for a second. I'm like, I saw you as the Joker in Skyfall. You were freaking terrifying at some points, and this is just not that at all. And then there's Melissa McCarthy, who under normal circumstances, she like chews the scenery and does like, improv and, all of the babbling and stuff. And I'm like, okay, with Melissa McCarthy, this is a good role for her. She can, be catty and everything. She can be, have fun with the character. And again, subdued, lame, boring. I just did not care an ounce.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Under the Sea was probably the most disappointing. It's like such a big scene and everything it's a show-stopping number in the animated movie and everything. And it's like, even on the stage musical, they'll, get everything around. In this case, I felt like I was watching a screensaver. There was just nothing interesting going on. It's like, there's we got a hot crustacean band. Where? I don't see a hot crustacean band. I don't see, sea creatures playing the whale or, playing other instruments and stuff. It's just, they're gently dancing around because we only have so much budget on the CGI. Fuck you.
It's a lot of things. I really feel Javier Bardem was the biggest missed opportunity, because Triton is a hothead, but he cares about his daughter, and there's heart that they completely miss in any part of his performance. And then I think they foreshadow Ursula way too early, but like she doesn't do anything. Like nope. She has some interesting lines, but like they don't go far enough with the character.
And again, they do the thing that they've done with a lot of the Disney stage musicals, including Little Mermaid. They did this, in that they have it that Ursula is the sister of Triton, but God, they don't do anything with that. It's like, oh, that's nice. What do they interact together aside from her trying to steal the thing? I don't see any connection with it. Stop doing that, Disney.
Yeah, just because it worked in Star Wars doesn't mean it's going to work here.
It just... There are so many decisions that baffle me. And the original is such a classic. It's one of my favorite movies. That and Beauty and the Beast are so good. And it feels like every single time they're like, oh, we got to get rid of this. We got to get rid of this. Just, no. Like, yeah, there are problematic elements in some of the older films. I get it. Lady and the Tramp worked because they took out a lot of that. but you still gotta keep in the heart and joy and wackiness of the original.
Yeah, at least the vibrancy and, not the cringe. But
Remember the swamp?
oh god. I will give it credit for something though, because once you get past all the underwater stuff, once they're on land, the movie actually gets a little better. And that's by virtue of the fact that they actually show Ariel and Eric building their relationship, showing that they have stuff in common, actually connecting over their interests. Because don't get me wrong, the original romance between them is sweet and everything. But at the same time, it's it still comes off more as, oh, Ariel saw, her first ever male human and automatically fell in love with him. And it still feels like that even by the end. It's what can you really say these two have in common? And it feels like, she's giving up way too much on her end to be with him, and he's not doing anything. Whereas here, they meet, and you discover, hey, he's actually as big a hoarder as she is. And she actually, listens to him about his collection and actually shows him the hidden secrets of it. And it turns out, they both want to travel far. They both feel like they're being restricted by their overbearing parents. They both want to travel. So it's you actually feel more for them as a couple. So that's where I think this movie is the strongest, by actually showing that relationship. And yeah, you hit the rest of the beats pretty fine, but, even when they're having a one-sided conversation, at least you feel like they're still connecting despite the lack of words. So I can at least give the movie kudos for that much. It's yay, you guys actually said more than a few words to each other.
You made Eric a character. You actually did a lot with that. I enjoyed the romance between them a lot more, but it's when you combine everything together, it's a pretty lackluster product at the end of the day.
No, I agree. It's definitely lopsided with a lot of stuff because, as a full project, it just so lacks in a lot of things. And I get they try to improve some things. They try to cover some loopholes, like the fact that instead of Ariel signing her name on the contract, she does a blood prick, and that just to make it more of a blood oath that she cannot break, and it overrides the whole thing that she actually can't write, so she can't communicate with him that way. At least that was a clever way to get around the loophole, but I don't know.
Having her forget, though,
that was too much. It's I get they wanted to make it seem like, oh, she doesn't just want to get with him because it'll break the spell on her, but I still feel like it was unnecessary.
Yeah, they're just.
It's just a way for Ursula to cheat.
Yeah. I did say
you won by cheating.
What was it? What was I gonna say? I do like this whole setting too of the kingdom being in the Caribbean instead of what was it, Denmark originally. The whole area is actually pretty, hopping. And it kind of makes more sense now why Sebastian has a Jamaican accent.
It makes it understandable. I like the Jamaican marketplace and stuff like that. There were some really cool interludes.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish it was attached to a better film.
I will say one thing I was surprised, because I kept getting the hint that they were going to add more to Eric's backstory, because they revealed that he's actually an orphan whose parents died in a shipwreck, and the queen adopted him. And I suddenly was getting 13th year vibes, where it was going to be revealed later on that he himself is actually a mermaid, and I'm like, whoa, that would be an interesting twist. But
that would have been so cool. He was a long lost member of the mermaids and whatnot. That would have actually, because I was starting to think that a little bit, or at least that his parents, were killed by them, but they didn't really do anything with it, which is unfortunate.
Because it would have been interesting to show that he discovered his heritage and he had the option to actually become a mermaid again, but that meant giving up his life on land. So that would have been a nice juxtapose to Ariel giving up everything, her whole life in the sea. So I don't know if that would have worked the same way, since we know Ariel wanted to be on land, but I don't know. I felt like they could have made it work with some rewrites and stuff. It's just a shame that they didn't bother to go that route.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 5. We're halfway through the list. Elemental. Elemental I have at number 4.
I have it at number 3.
Number 2.
I was honestly surprised by Elemental. I was expecting it to be generic. The marketing for this film was not good. What I got was a surprisingly wholesome tale of immigration. And as someone who is Italian blood, my grandparents came over on the boat. This really resonated with me. I thought I would hate Wade Ripple, and I didn't. I love him. He's the heart of the film. It's just a case of two people that you think wouldn't work together, and learning about their families and the prejudices, even the subtle ones that they face, that they don't even know themselves. And it was a really wholesome movie. I don't like the lie reveal subplot near the end. There's some parts that I was just like, okay, that's a little bit rote. Which is why I put it a little bit lower, but I still think it's a beautiful movie. There's a scene where she's taken underwater, and it's amazing. I highly enjoyed it. I just feel like it needed a little bit less cliches, but overall, for a Pixar film, this was great. Kat?
Oh yeah, this film was beautiful. The way they were able to animate all the 4 elements and everything, and the design of the city, it was breathtaking. Especially the scenes, like you said, going underwater to see the flower, them touching hands for the first time, the whole montage of their date. It's so beautiful. I could see why this got nominated for, Best Animated Film. Obviously, it didn't have a chance of winning, but at least visual-wise, it was breathtaking. Definitely. In terms of its story, like I said, I do like the stories both of, the whole immigration metaphor, the whole, generational trauma and stuff, as well as the, the interracial romance. I thought those were all good. I feel like they kind of clashed at times, because it's after a while you're like, well, I want to see more of this, so why are we focusing on this again? And there are things about it that are a bit frustrating, the whole layout of the city, the fact that everything is almost designed specifically to kill fire people, and the fact that Wade didn't have the best start as a character. You almost hate him up until a certain point. But I think the way they work it out toward the end, it ends up working out really well. And I really would hope that they either make a sequel or a TV series spin-off of this.
And Mr. Doug.
Yeah, pretty much what Kat said. Very much I like the visuals of it. I think honestly, there were some times I wish they had even pushed it further. With Ember going on to the gems and changing color a lot, or just more facets of Elemental City, being on display. Obviously we really only see the fire and the water for the most part. We get a little bit with the air and the earth. I feel like we could have, gotten them a little more involved, but obviously, we have the love story that's really the main focus of everything. I absolutely adore the romance between Ember and Wade. I think it's great that they, go in on that, and then it's oh, hey, your love actually changes your chemistry so that you can actually touch. I think that's a brilliant thing. And I think I love when Wade, after Ember's denied to see that flower in the museum, he, makes that bubble for her so that she can actually go into the water and see it. I thought, there are some great ideas on display. But Wade and Ember, as, separate characters, I have issues with. Wade can kind of be a little bit of a, it's how do I put this?
Crybaby?
It's not even the crybaby. It's just just kind of acts a lot without thinking about what he's really doing. Like when he first comes in, yeah, when he first comes in, gets thrown into the basement and everything. It's like he doesn't even know what's going on, and immediately he's gonna write Ember up for that. It's like, and it wasn't even like really her fault. It's because the city is, flawed in how it's built. Especially, it seems like, honestly, it almost seems like they're trying to get rid of the fire people, and I felt like that was ultimately going to be like the ultimate plot of the thing, but it's not. And then like you have Ember, who's just like, she's going out of her way to, she thinks she wants to run the shop, but really she doesn't. But she's like working so hard because she wants to please her father and do something. I can't really put it on it, my finger on exactly what it is, but it's like the way she goes about doing things and her personality otherwise, it just kind of annoys me. And I also don't like the fact that she gets like scrutinized because she doesn't want to give customer freebies, and then her dad's, willing to let him just because it's good for business. It's like, at what point do you stop and say, no, the customer's actually a jerk? You can ban...
That was my big thing. I've worked retail, and I'm like, asshole, you don't get free. It's like, but I want the free one. Well, you have to buy one.
I'm like, I get that you got to be patient with the customers. Believe me, I've done a lot of customer service. It's like, I know they're going to do things that are just going to drive you nuts, and you are going to be, pushed to your breaking point at times. But even then, there's a point at which you have to say no.
Yeah, and like, in addition to the liar reveal, the fake out death.
Well, let's face it, they were never going to go that hard. Yeah.
I know, but it just, like, even going that route is just a bit much for me, because, like, there's, like, drip, drip, and they get him back, and I'm just like... that part really annoyed me. It's why I put it a little bit lower on my list, but overall, this is a great movie. I definitely recommend it. I think it's one of a stronger outings recently, but it's not quite Pixar best. It's getting up there, but not quite
it's
the
so
best,
close to the top, but it just has things that are weighing it down a bit from being, there.
Yeah, it does at times remind me of Ghibli, though, with like the way they do the fire animation and the musical score.
Yeah, like honestly, like a lot of the buildings in like the fire area I was definitely getting severe Ghibli vibes.
And that whatever that song is that they play, Kat showed it to me when underwater, is so beautiful.
Well, from what I read, the person that did the score was the same one that did the score for WALL-E and which would explain a lot. Like that, I love the music in WALL-E. Like, especially that one piece of them floating through space. That's what it kind of reminded me of in Elemental. And then, of course, they had Love do that one song, Steal the Show. I love that song.
Yeah, like, Steal the Show is what I was referring to. It's so good. Anything to add before we move on? I think this is a great movie, just held slightly back.
Yeah. I feel bad that it came out when it did, and it was like right in the midst of Barbenheimer. So, but thankfully, it did eventually find the audience. I'm a little disappointed that they're still doing this, after the fact, revealing that, oh, hey, we added a trans character. They're right here. I'm like, I can't tell. This person's like so generic that they look like a female, I guess, but there's nothing really. And of course, it's like you only know because somebody told you. It's like, Disney, you gotta stop being afraid of the foreign market, or just go for it. Otherwise, don't bother.
Yeah, I am a little bit annoyed at. I didn't even know this was a thing, but it's just like, as a trans person myself, like, the whole point is like, yeah, it shouldn't be a huge deal that they're trans, but it should, like, if you're going to include it, it should have some point to it, you know?
Yeah, it's like with J.K. Rowling saying that Dumbledore was gay after the series was done. It's like, okay, so what was the point of that, really?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do with that?
Doesn't have any bearing on anything. It's like at
God.
least in like Onward, you know, you have like the cop, you know, kind of mention that, oh, my wife is going to be upset or something. It's like, okay, at least there's that. But this was a whole lot of nothing. I would not be able to get at all that this character is supposed to be trans.
Yeah, it's like, we need to stop tiptoeing around it. Have representation or don't, but at least, like, just saying something after the fact doesn't give you representation. All right, on to the 6th release of the year, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, before I get into where it ranks, for this, I had to do some research, because prior to this month, I had never seen any Indiana Jones film whatsoever.
Blasphemy!
So this was a lot. When growing up, when I went to Disney World, I did go to the Indiana Jones experience. So I just, I got that, and I went on the Indiana Jones ride, and I saw the live action shows and stuff like that. But aside from cultural osmosis, I hadn't seen the films. So I sat down, I watched it. Me and Phil and Tifa did a whole 2.5-hour podcast ranking the films.
How did you feel ranking 3 films?
Oh. Just to simplify it for you guys at home, my top is The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade is fantastic. It has Sean Connery and John Rhys Davies in leading role. Loved it. Second was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
What's that? Somebody needs to throw you into a fridge or something. You sound very alien.
Look, I know it has some dumb stuff in it, but it has a lot of fun in it. It's very camp. It's very over the top. I just had a lot more fun with it than some of the others.
On an unrelated note, has anybody ever seen Scrubs? I love Neil Flynn as the janitor. I don't know why I brought that up.
As for the next film, like Raiders, I put just underneath Crystal Skull, and mostly because I like Raiders of the Lost Ark, but the third act is very slow and it has 2 climaxes, and there's a lot of sexism and some racism in the beginning. So it's like, there's some iffy points. And then Dial of Destiny. And then at the bottom is Temple of Doom, because that was viscerally hurting me to watch.
Honestly, I don't blame you with that. Like, in hindsight, when you do look at Temple of Doom, some stuff is like just downright cringe, and you just think to yourself, how the hell?
Kalima!
It's like you think to yourself,
you
how
betrayed the shareholders.
It's like, how the hell did they get away with this back in the day? Like, I know it was like the 70s or whatever, 70s or 80s, but dear God, this
80s,
stuff. Yeah, dear God, some of this stuff, like, man, I'm surprised the entire, like, country of India didn't sue them.
And a lot of it was filmed in Sri Lanka, and like, I'm surprised that like they went with it, but I hated Willie. I hated the dinner scene. I just like so much of it, and Doom feels like a Bond movie with the serial numbers filed off for me. And
lady only here because she helping director.
Kiho Kwan is the only thing that is
Kihei Kwan is
retroactively good about that movie.
Now, to be fair, like, his character in both this and The Goonies are somewhat stereotypical, but he's such a good actor that he makes the character work.
And it's funny
With
because
that
he
being-
originally didn't have that role. His brother had the role, but he kept forgetting the lines. Meanwhile, Kiwi Kwan actually memorized it, like, unknowingly. So that's kind of a cool little tidbit right there.
That's pretty cool. For some reason, I'd really need to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. I haven't seen it.
Yes, you do.
You absolutely do.
Fantastic film.
Maybe I'll watch it after the Guardians of the Galaxy prequel, Rise of the Guardians.
It's like the Oscars are nonsense, but he deserved that award.
Hell yeah.
So, watching this as an adult, a lot of my opinions are different than I would have had as a kid. Like, I'm going into it with the mindset that looking back at the first two films, they haven't aged very well. But Crusade and Skull, for me, were great. I had Dial of Destiny at number 7.
Number 10.
Dead last 10.
Wow. Now, here's the thing. I did not like a lot of the decisions in this film. They killed off his son. They unmarried him and Marion, which is like the whole point of the last film is they ended with them married. And they're divorced and he's a better old man and it's so depressing to see. And it's just like a lot of the decisions I really didn't agree with until like the second half where like they talked about how his son died and how that broke him apart. It's like the execution I liked, but for me, this was like really middle of the road. Like, I only put it slightly above The Little Mermaid because I still think Harrison Ford tried. He sounds very tired, but he tried, and the de-aging on him worked. Not much else did.
Ugh. No, I will say, like, the de-aging wasn't, it wasn't cringe. Like, it was somewhat passable, but it's still obvious that this is a body double trying to play someone who is an 80-year-old man. And that's what I learned. Like, Harrison Ford is the oldest person to be de-aged in a Disney movie so far. Like, at age 80. In fact, he's the oldest, like, man to ever be a lead in a Disney movie. Which, you know, is impressive, but not when it's in a movie that's this bad. Because, dear God, like, quick summary of my history with Indiana Jones. Like, I did not grow up with this per se. I actually was in college the first time I watched the trilogy. And it was at my dad's insistence because he was a big fan of the trilogy. And I admittedly loved it. I thought it was great. I could see why a lot of people liked it. I even liked Temple of Doom to a degree. You know, obviously Willie was the worst thing about it, but, you know, that aside. So when Crystal Skull came around, you know, I agreed with the masses. I thought it was the worst. And in hindsight, the hate was kind of a little bit overblown because it's like, you look at the ridiculousness that he deals with in the first 3 movies and you compare it to this ridiculousness and it's like, there's not much difference here. It's just, you know, he's older now.
When you compare it to like the raft sequence where they fly out of a plane in a raft, like, and like they met God, they saw someone ripping out a heart. Like, what is so ridiculous about nuking the fridge? Like, I get that it wouldn't work, but none of the other things would have worked.
Like, he survived a lot of stuff that should have killed him by now. So, yeah, I don't see what's much of the difference with the fridges at this point. Especially since, you know, he drank from the Holy Grail, so he's probably some level of immortal, I'm assuming.
Like, he's slow aging. They don't exactly say how it works personally, but I think it's like the water inside there. You have to keep taking the water, which is, you know, that would explain some things. But, like, I just write it off as, you know, that's just the water. But also, in Crusade, they survived a plane in the tunnel and the bomb right next to them.
Yeah,
so...
Yeah, the point is, like, we've seen ridiculous stuff. So I was expecting the same with this, which, trust me, there was plenty. But the difference with this movie, I was in literal fucking pain watching this. Like, I was in so much pain. like, because I always can tell when I'm not fully enjoying a movie or if a movie is too overly long because my ass starts to hurt. Because by that point, I've been there so long, it's fusing with the seat. But if the movie's good enough, I usually don't notice. But this one, I was begging the screen to erupt into flames just to give me a reason to get out of the theater.
It is 2.5 hours long. Every single Indiana Jones movie before this was at most 2 hours, 2 hours, 5 minutes.
Yes, this is literally the longest Indiana Jones movie at 2 hours and 34 minutes. They could have easily shaved off at least 30 minutes of this. Because, dear God, like, from what I heard, the opening scene back in 1944, the flashback, that was only supposed to be 5 minutes long. And they lengthened it to like 25 minutes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not totally pissed off about that because I actually thought the first scene was the best scene in the movie. Because you're seeing classic indie doing classic indie stuff. And he's
but
not... But
then you get like 45, 50 minutes in and you're like, nothing's happened.
Yeah, but then you get to the rest of the movie set in, I use air quotes, modern day, because it's actually 1969. And you just see him as this sad old man, and, like, he's all alone, he's dealing with his loud-ass neighbors, people are celebrating, like, the first space travel, landing on the moon. He's completely out of his element, he doesn't have a passion for traveling or teaching anymore, he's retiring, but he doesn't like that he's retiring. So he's, like... He had such a good, happy ending in the last movie, and I know a lot of people hated that for some reason, but it's like, this one kind of just undoes all of it. Like, I kept thinking of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, the first one ended perfectly, and then the second one comes along and completely undoes all of that for no reason. So
the best way I described it was they J.J. Abrams did. They Rise of Skywalker Crystal Skull.
Kinda, yeah, pretty much. Like, I wouldn't go that far, but they definitely added unnecessary conflicts and, like, just overall sadness to this. And it's like, yes, I get it's supposed to prompt him to go on one last adventure, but the way it comes about, it just... Because, like, you see his new sidekick, which is his goddaughter, and you think that, she's going to be like a young Indy. She's going to bring him back into the fray. He's going to teach her what he knows and stuff. But no, it turns out she's a crook. She just wants
She's the worst.
She just wants...
the worst.
Yeah, she's just looking for a certain artifact to get money from it. Even though she knows that the same artifact is responsible for her father going crazy. So it's like... Okay, so you're just disregarding your father's memory and you're dredging up all these bad memories for your godfather just to make a quick buck. Wow, I really am endeared to you. And then... Yeah,
like, there's way too much bad stuff with Helena, and, like, I didn't like her until, like, the second half when she's actually helping him. But there's so much, like, that just not to like about her. And the fact that she's like, oh, what would you know? You're not a family man. Directly contradicting the end of the last film.
Yeah, and it takes him having to tell how his son, died in the war for her to realize, oh, wait, maybe he's not as bad as I thought. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Him and his son butted heads, and his son probably went, his son joined the war mostly to spite him, but you can hardly call that his fault that his son was such a dumbass. But, yeah.
And it's
he was played by Shia
scene.
LaBeouf.
It's a really emotional scene. I kind of wish that they had done something with it, but I mean, Shia LaBeouf is a bad person, so,
But the other thing, too, is that even the plot of this is derivative of Raiders, because it's him fighting against the Nazis to keep away this one MacGuffin that will get them to do the thing that will help them rise to power again, and he inadvertently leads them to said thing, only when they get said thing, it backfires and gets them killed. It's pretty much the same plot when you think about it, except you throw time travel into it. And it kind of makes it all the more dumb because of it.
It's at least not a face-melting scene, but they waste Mads Middleman here, because, like, his whole thing is that he wants to go invent time travel, paraphrasing here, invent time travel, go back in time, and the future will be better, because he wants to kill Hitler and take over the Third Reich. And I'm like, okay, So you have to get past Hitler's guards, somehow make them believe that you're the new Hitler, and then your leadership is the only thing that'll change the tide of... This doesn't make sense, but...
Isn't that the plot of a Justice League episode?
I'm like, dear God, like, do you really think that's gonna work? Like, you and a handful of your goons are gonna take down Hitler. This man literally had hundreds upon hundreds of assassins from various different armies, even his own army, trying to assassinate him, and he survived them all. Like, it took a Quentin Tarantino movie literally changing time and adding in Brad Pitt just to create a scenario in which he dies. Like, and what, you think you have a chance? Really? Good luck, buddy.
What do you think, Doug?
Oh, I have never wanted a movie to be over so bad. And I have seen some movies that I just wanted to end already. But, oh God, this was pain. I was shifting in my seat constantly, and I'm in one of those, lounge recliners. So
thankfully, I could pause the film. That's a one saving grace of Disney Plus.
Yeah,
I didn't spend money on
I do regret having gone to a theater to see it. Did not. Did we see it on a Tuesday? I hope we saw it on a Tuesday
because I didn't have to pay money.
I really hope we saw it on a Tuesday.
We did.
Otherwise. Yeah, because otherwise I'm like, no, we knew ahead of time we didn't want to pay full price for this. And yeah, it's like, I wish I could have paid less. I wish they could have paid me for the time that I wasted. They should
pay us by this point.
Oh, God. Well, first off, it's like, yeah, the de-aged, Harrison Ford. I'm just like, could you do something with, the audio on his voice to make him sound like he's the older, the younger version? Because it's like, this is the current Harrison Ford voice coming out of his mouth. So I'm like, I have a very hard time believing this is, young Indy. And then you have Mads Mikkelsen as the villain in the beginning. And he gets, like, knocked the fuck off a train at like high speed by like the water tower or something, and he's fine. Yeah, that he comes back later. He's fine. He's the villain of the movie. I'm like, I by that point you've lost me. They had such a thing about like killing people off willy nilly. Like you had that one the one girl. She's like. She seems like she's going to be a bigger deal than she is, and she just gets shot.
Are you talking about the U.S. agent who was extremely dumb because she thinks she could trust the former Nazi? Oh, dear God,
was she dumb.
Yeah, like, there's so many problems with
the horse ride through New York City and into the subway. I'm like, stop!
Just stop.
So
stop.
Bad.
He's already old.
It's so bad. And yeah, and Indiana Jones is miserable. And it's like, everybody's miserable. And then you have the God's daughter come in, and she's not really likable. Go on this, and they do the dumb thing, and you have Antonio Banderas. I'm happy to see you. He gets shot. Why do you kill everybody I want to see?
Stop killing everyone.
Dies.
That's oddly specific.
It's just one dumb thing after another till they get in the freaking past and they realize, oh wait, there was continental drift, so we're in the wrong place, and they get themselves fucking killed. And Indiana is supposed to die, but then she doesn't want to have him die there, so she brings him back somehow. I don't even know. Yeah,
there's a lot of stupid.
Honestly, they should have left Indy there to live out his days and then die. Because then he literally would have been part of a museum, and he could have said for like
a museum.
Exactly.
You belong in a museum.
I'm like, okay, I know Harrison Ford does not want to give up the role to anybody else, but at this point, just either do it or don't make any more Indiana Jones films. It's like, because at least the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was fun up to a point, even if it was ridiculous. But then, like, I had a visceral reaction to it being aliens, and I, like, legitimately thought I was going to throw up.
I mean,
but,
like, I thought that was fine comparatively. We had, like, God and a Grail and, like, stuff like that. I can see some people seeing it different ways. For me, it's just, like, when you have Dial of Destiny, it's not racist, but, like, it's just, it does a lot of these wrong things where I don't want to watch a lot of it.
No.
It's not, like, bad on the same level of Doom for me, where, like, I was grossed out by, like, the level of racism. But for me, like, Dial of Destiny, like, the second half is getting better with the characters, getting better with the action. So I can't fully call it awful. It's just, for me, like, there's not enough tombs, there's not enough indie action, everyone's miserable, it's padded. So it's a very nothing movie.
Yeah, this movie honestly has no reason to exist. It's like, what does it add, really? It just adds more misery to Indiana Jones's life. And he shouldn't have that by this point. Like, when we ended off with Crusades, you know, it was them riding into the sunset. And it's like, cool, you know, we can end things here. It's like, yeah, he could go on more adventures, but hey, we left off on a good point. And then we get into Crystal Skull, and it's like, yeah, weird shit happens, and he gets dragged back in again to more shit. But hey, at least it ended with him, you know, happily married to his first love and with a kid. And now, what does he really have? It's like yes, he gets back again with his wife, I guess, but he's, I assume, still wanted by the US government for murder. Not that they ever address that again. And he's
there's
no longer,
a lot of weird.
Yeah, he's no longer teaching. I assume he's not going to go on any more adventures by this point. So it's like, what did we really gain or learn? It's like, yeah, now I guess he has a better relationship with his goddaughter, but yeah, again, this had no reason to exist whatsoever.
All right. Anything else to add before we move on?
No more.
I don't want to think about this ever again. Never.
Stop. It belongs in a museum.
Never again.
Top men. Kali Ma.
Top men. They should have used
You
the
chose wrong.
Crystal Skull. You chose poorly. All right, on to the next film that was released 2023, Haunted Mansion 2023. I have this at number 6.
I have this at number 5.
Number 4.
All right, so I didn't rewatch the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion for this. There was no need.
We already covered it in the Halloween special. There was no point. You didn't need to not need to subject yourself to that again.
This is a very different tone of film, and I feel like the biggest problem to me is, like, the Eddie Murphy film was too slow to start. This was too confusing to start. It felt very fast. Like, there was a lot of stuff in the first half where I'm just like, wait, what? And it does click into place by the second half. It's just like, oh, why was this a mystery? Like, they try to make his wife dying a mystery, and you can see it coming, but, like, the way, like, they film it is just, like, it's supposed to be a mystery, and it just really isn't. I like this film, but I have a lot of problems with it. It has some really interesting casting choices. I love Danny DeVito, but, like, I don't know why he was specifically chosen for this film. He does a great job. It's just, like, it's not really the best role for him. But, like, you know, Danny DeVito and, what's his name?
Owen Wilson?
Owen Wilson are fantastic in this. And then you have the other characters who do a pretty decent job. And I think overall it's a fun film, but then there's the climax is so ridiculous, and, like, it both over-explains and under-explains at points, and I'm like, I feel it needed better editing. I feel like, in general, there are parts in the climax where I'm just like, this is ridiculous. I like the premise, but I feel like the first half was just, I was confused. I don't know, Kat?
No, I agree. That was one of my big problems with this, is the fact that it jumps from scene to scene with like little to no transition. It's like 1 minute we're with him in his home, and the next minute we're at the mansion, and then another minute it's back in time when he meets his wife, and another moment it's with that lady and her son, and it's like, dude, pick a focus already. Like, if at least explain the transitions. Like, I guess some people give movies guff for, like, you know, always adding labels like this is the city or this is the time period or something, but sometimes you kind of need that, especially if you're not going to have a proper transition. So yeah, like them jumping around a lot, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, it took a while before I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. So these are supposed to be flashbacks and this is supposed to be current, but again, they don't make that clear, so it's very confusing.
Yeah. And they don't explain what happened to his wife until later on, and he does, in a very emotional scene, he's just like, oh, my wife died, and I'm like, but why was that a mystery? And also, why did they throw in a Baskin Robbins reference? Because now all I can think of is Paul Rudd coming in.
Baskin Robbins always finds out.
Because Baskin Robbins killed my grandma.
I do love how, like, after he says that whole emotional speech, then Danny DeVito's like, wait, she was eating all of these foods and stuff? How did she not die before that? And I'm like, whoa, talk about tonal whiplash here.
And that's the thing, like, there's a very big tonal whiplash, kind of like, in Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's not as bad, but, like, you have really good humor, and then really good drama, but they're not put together right. It's like they're cobbled together.
Because, like, I know that originally the whole film was supposed to be directed by Guillermo del Toro, and he wanted to take it in a little more of a serious direction, more of, like, focus on the ethereal plane and stuff, which is understandable, you know, but I feel like they were still trying to fall back on what was comfortable. It's like the first one with Eddie Murphy, I mean, the whole reason they chose him because he was a comedic actor, and they wanted this to be scary, but in a lighthearted way. And I felt like that was the same thing they were trying to do here, hence why they were, like, stuffing it full of these unnecessary comedians. But it's like, do you really need that? Like, I get the mansion and the ghost can be scary and stuff, and I get you wanna make it more palatable for younger kids, but you don't need to go this hard. You don't need to just have unnecessary, like, witty banter and stuff, especially after scenes that, you know, where there's such, like, a heavy emotional load being dropped on the audience. It just, I don't know, I feel like there was, like, they borrowed some stuff from Del Toro's vision, but then they combined it with more of their lighthearted comedic version, and it just clashes really bad.
Yeah, I really want to see what Del Toro could have put together, because the more serious parts are probably some of the better parts. Don't get me wrong, I like the medium and some of the comedic scenes, but a lot of it, sometimes very unnecessary. Master Doug.
Yeah, it was a good one. I wish I hadn't seen the Eddie Murphy one after that, because now it's kind of having seen that around the same time as the one that just came out. It's like now I'm kind of blending everything together a bit. But I do remember the new one being, you know, actually somewhat fun. Yeah, I agree with you. There may have been like one too many characters in it. But I thought there were some interesting choices. I like that, you know, the focus on the Hatbox Ghost, and, you know, I like that they had that little animation at the other hotel or mansion, whatever, to, you know, talk about his backstory. So I thought, you know, there were some good choices, and it was ultimately harmless. Yeah, I enjoyed Owen Wilson. I liked wow, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Who played the mother?
Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson, yeah. And then, like, yeah, the kid who, you know, had that weird thing with dressing up, all nice and everything. And he's like, I should be cool, but no, I'm actually not. And then it's like, of course, a lot of the plot being tied to him, wanting his dad back and the Hatbox Ghost manipulating him. I don't know. I don't really remember much about Danny DeVito in the movie, to be honest.
He has a really weird scene in the climax where he's possessed.
It's like, I remember, he really wants to be in that house desperately, but they don't want him
He's
in
like,
there.
I'm like 60 years old. I have so many things put in my house, but I want to be there.
But, I mean, on the whole, yeah, it was pretty harmless at the end. And I like the end, once the Hatbox Ghost is gone and the ghosts have the opportunity, to move on, but they decide to just keep, for lack of a better term, living.
They want to have a party, which is
they
want to
have a party like they do in the ride.
Like,
so yeah, absolutely. They're gonna have a good time. And now it's like it's haunted, but it's haunted in a good way.
So, like, there are good things. I do like how they explain that, like, Darcy kept opening a portal for more things to come over because he wanted to see his dead wife, and he brought over something malevolent. That's pretty cool. That makes sense. I like that there is explanation. But it took a while to get to, like, the explanation, and the editing's so weird.
Yeah, I will admit, they meandered a lot getting to, like, the main explanation of the movie. Like, we get to a point where we see Danny DeVito get possessed. We know that there are people trapped in the house with this malevolent ghost who are in immediate danger. Yet we still have time for, the main guy, Ben, to go over to another mansion like an hour away and go on this very slow tour group just to find a hint as to how to defeat the ghost. I'm like, a little urgency here, guys? Was this really the best way to go about this? It just feels like, again, the whole tonal problem. It's like, one hand, we're supposed to be scared, and this is a serious situation. On the other hand, well, I guess maybe not, despite the fact that our lives are in danger. We can just stop for a bit and do this thing.
Especially because no one notices them breaking into the secret passage underneath the chimney.
Yep. They're just like, nope, we're not getting paid enough for this.
I'm like, okay. Like, it's at odds with itself. I like it because it's over the top and funny. So I put it a little bit higher than probably some others because, like, I still enjoyed it a lot more than the Eddie Murphy one because there was a lot of comedy and fun. But it is very tonally inconsistent. Anything else before we move on?
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. It's like, I feel bad that I'm giving this a better rating by virtue of the fact that the first one sucks so bad, but at least there was an attempt made. At least they were actually drawing from the lore of the mansion itself. They added in the Hatbox Ghost. They added in those dueling ghosts. They even added in the whole sea captain. Yeah, the bride and the sea captain. Like, they actually explained, because you see the characters act realistically. It's like, oh, there's a ghost, I'm getting the hell out of here. But the ghosts follow them. Like, that's genius. So.
And I'm just like, I would have been like, fuck this shit, I'm out. But they follow you, so,
Yeah, that makes it even more terrifying. So, clearly there was effort and thought put into this. It just wasn't that well executed. And at least by the end, like Doug said, they remembered that, hey, the ghosts like to be in the mansion. They like to party. They don't have a reason to move on because, they enjoy being dead and even occasionally scaring people. And that's what the Haunted Mansion's all about. So it's a step in the right direction. I still wish we one day will get a version from Guillermo del Toro because he's just as big a fan as I am and as the other people are of the mansion. But who knows? Like, for now, I think this and Muppets Haunted Mansion is probably the best we're gonna get.
And Muppets Haunted Mansion is better, but this was still a good attempt. I just wish it was edited better. As someone who has edited my own stuff, it was very jarring. Mm. Anything else, Doug?
Nope, I'm with you. It's like better than the Eddie Murphy version, but the Muppets will still reign supreme.
All right, we have talked about all of the Haunted Mansions. Now let us move over to a different type of murder mystery with a haunting in Venice. Now, I'm a huge Kenneth Branagh Hercule Poirot fan. I saw the original Murder on the not the original, the Kenneth Branagh Murder on the Orient Express when it came out in theaters as a double feature. That, and then I saw Captain Underpants. It was a great double feature. But and I loved it from that. I loved that film, and so I recently rewatched it, and it still holds up. I watched the one that I hadn't seen, which is Death of the Nile. It's pretty middle of the road for me. I have problems with it. Kat and I both kind of have problems with it.
I have problems with it.
Yeah, going into this, I was like, all right, I hope it's more like Murder on the Orient Express. Do something fun. This ended up being one of my favorite movies. It is number 2, and I gave it 5-star rating. This is my favorite Kenneth Branagh Poirot film, in just so many ways. So yeah, number 2 for me. What did you guys have it at?
Number 2.
Number 3.
Okay. What really gets me is that this isn't a standard mystery. There's a horror film tone to this, and it really works. The atmosphere is dark and gloomy, but it's well lit enough. There are scenes where you're not sure what you're seeing. It feels like it's shot like The Ring in some points, and it really gets me. But also, all of the characters are likable. Like, I didn't like half the characters in Death of the Nile, but I like all of them, even though there's reason to suspect all of them. And they're all trapped inside a palazzo in Venice when everything's flooded during a thunderstorm. It is so great. It's great for Poirot's character because he comes out of retirement to do this one case, and he's invigorated by the end. There's so much thematically I love about this, and I didn't see, like, I saw kind of one of the twists, but I didn't see, like, some of the other twists coming, and I feel like it doesn't just rely on one twist, and unlike some of my problems with Death of the Nile, where I'm like, how are they able to do that in, like, 5 minutes? This murder makes sense to me, so, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Doug?
Yeah, like I said, for me it was a 3. It was number 3 on my list. I was very hesitant to see this one after Death on the Nile. I mean, the Death on the Nile, they take forever to actually get to the actual death. I'm like,
there's barely any death on that Nile.
Yeah, I'm like, I get it. You have your Gal Gadot, and you want to get as much use out of her as you can, but come on, we got places to be here. It's like, but having seen this one, I'm like, they went with Ridley Scott to do this one, and oh man, the just atmosphere of everything is just mwah. I love the look of Venice and the canals and some of those overhead shots. Just very visually, this film is just delightful, just stunning, spectacular. It's like, on the one hand, I know that they're gonna ground this in reality, but they did kind of have me believing that maybe they would go for the supernatural at some points, and I guess they kind of did. So and I thought, yeah, this was a nice one. I was kind of confused by Tina Fey a little bit. Didn't really know what her thing was, but okay, everybody did pretty much a good job on that. So yeah, I know, like, Kenneth Branagh's Poirot is kind of like, I guess he's still reeling from the events of Death of the Nile, and I guess things didn't work out with the girl. So it's like he's kind of not doing any more detective work, but it's like you have to drag him back into this one.
This is also after World War II, so
yeah.
I feel like that affected him too.
It was interesting that they say, oh, they actually brought Halloween over to Italy, that it didn't have it before. So I'm like, I didn't realize that was not, they didn't have it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
I mean, to be fair, like, the concept of Halloween's more of like a Northern European thing. And, the Americanized version didn't come until a little later on. But even then, it was still a bit different than what we know now. Like, Fake Mischief Night, that used to be a lot more hardcore back in the day. Yeah, I actually thought this was a vast improvement over Death on the Nile, because I will admit, when it comes to Agatha Christie stories, I'm uncultured swine. So I didn't read any of the stories. I didn't see any version of the originals of either
Same.
Yeah, any of that. So I kind of went into this, not really expecting much, but I was just hoping that it was better than the second one, because granted, Nile was filmed beautifully, and it went the way that I remember seeing it done in a play before, but it was so long and unnecessarily padded, and you just hate the characters, and it's like, you're just waiting for it to be over. And it ends so sadly, too. So it's like, okay, so, wow, I'm glad I watched this, now I'm depressed. So when this movie came along, I'm like, all right, so he's back for one last mystery. Well, let's hope this ends better. And yeah, this actually went in a much better direction, because you don't hate all the characters, you actually hope that some of them get a happy ending based on their circumstance. And the explanation ends up making a lot of sense in hindsight. And like Doug said, the whole cinematography is just stunning. Like, you think of Ridley Scott's films like Alien, his other horror films, he borrows from that, and the sharp angles, the shadows, the quick edits and stuff. It's it gives you such a sense of dread, but also excitement. It really it keeps your eyes glued to the screen just to see what comes next. And yeah, I was definitely going through my head. I'm like, okay, so there's some obvious red herrings here in terms of the suspects, but how is this gonna come about in a way that makes sense? And it actually does make sense when you look at it, and they actually use science to explain it too. So yeah, I really did enjoy this, and it's surprising. Even Tina Fey was decent, because technically, this is the first ever non-comedic role she's had in a film. So, I thought she did pretty decent. Again, I thought she was a bit of a red herring herself, by virtue of the fact she had to trick him into all this, but at least we got him in the film.
Yeah, I kind of saw that coming. That's the one twist I called. But, then realized, oh, she's not, everyone's kind of pulling the wool over his eyes, so it's I still didn't know, and, there's some really great twists and turns in there. It's just a great movie.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually a great Halloween movie, too. It has the theme and everything, it has the atmosphere, they acknowledge the holiday, so yeah, this is technically a Halloween film, and it puts you in that nice, creepy mood. And again, I love that they shot on location, too, in actual Venice. You actually get a sense of, how creepy the city can get, under certain circumstances. Because can you imagine being in a city that's partially underwater during, a storm? That's terrifying.
Yeah, and as someone who's actually visited Venice, I want to thank the filmmakers for doing two major things. One, cleaning up after all the tourists, because there usually is a lot of trash, and getting rid of all the pigeons, because there's usually 20,000 pigeons in the establishing shots that we didn't see.
That is not easy.
Yeah. So, normally, Venice is a tourist trap, and it's once you get to the inner city, that's where you get the real Venice, and that's where they shot this, but, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just glad that it ended on a better note, because it's yes, you still get some innocent people dying, but at least there's a better resolution. People get closure. Some people even, get in a better situation by the end, and Poirot actually has a renewed sense in humanity by the end as well. At least it gets him out of his shell and willing to help people with their problems again, because, he's a genius, and he has the ability to help a lot of people, and he really should use that. So I'm glad he finds, purpose in himself again by the end.
And I like the thematic thing of him being haunted by not only, literal ghosts, but the ghosts of his past, and how that goes to some of the other characters, because there was a World War II doctor who is being haunted as well, and it's just thematically like moving past the ghost and getting renewed vigor out of life, and it's one of my favorite murder mysteries of all time. I still need to see more. I need to read more Agatha Christie, but this is one of my top. Any other thoughts?
Watch this. Don't watch Death on the Nile. It's a better story.
Yeah. Skip Death on the Nile.
Murder on the Orient has problems, but I still like it so much better than Nile.
Agreed.
All right, moving on. Number 9, in terms of when it came out, The Marvels. So, The Marvels I have at number 3.
I have at number 4.
Number 5.
For me, The Marvels, like, Captain Marvel, when I first saw it, I thought it was pretty great, but it wasn't like top of any list. It was an enjoyable film that I liked. And I watched Miss Marvel. I have problems with it, but none of those problems are on Kamala herself, because Iman Vellani, I believe, is perfection as Kamala.
She is
her
delightful.
Family is perfection. I love all of them. What's that?
I said she is delightful. She
is a delight.
They really did such a great job in casting her.
So when
she's Marvel's cinnamon roll.
she's a little cinnamon roll, must be protected. So I liked those two films. When I saw that The Marvels was announced, I'm like, we'll see how this goes. Now, I really like it. My biggest problem in the film was that it takes a lot to get into it, compared to like literally any of the other films that I've watched recently, where you need to do homework. You need to not only watch Captain Marvel, you need to not only watch WandaVision to get like all the stuff for I guess they don't name her, but Monica Rambeau's character. You need to have. Well, I didn't watch Secret Invasion, but like you don't need to watch Secret Invasion.
Don't watch it. It will ruin your day.
You need to know what happened in Hawkeye for the end credit scene. There's just so much homework involved, and you need to have seen Miss Marvel to understand. Now, they do a great job in setting a lot of this up. They do some recapping. But that was my biggest thing, is like, all right, I had to remind myself about certain things. I'm like, I'm not going to rewatch all these films. Cat's waiting. But let's remind myself. But I really love this film. The main 3 cast works so well together, especially thematically. I like how it's very different, where Monica once idolized Captain Marvel, but now has issues with her. And then Kamala idolizes her, but Captain Marvel has some self-loathing. Like, there's a great group dynamic, and they come together and grow over the course of the film. Very funny. Kamala is the best part of the film. Her family is still in there, so that's great. The planet of Bollywood actors, amazing. Amazing. Bollywood planet is amazing.
I love that planet.
And I really loved the "shut up and let the Florkin eat you" scene set to cats. Because that is the best scene in cinema. Like, you have
release the butthole cut.
Release the butthole cut. They had to censor so many buttholes. But yeah, like the Florkins to set to cats is so brilliant. Like, I wanted to put my rating higher, but I just couldn't. Especially because while I like the villain and the villain's understandable, kind of one of the weaker points of the film. And there's so much homework, so it's like you really have to know your stuff going into it. But like, for what it is, I think it's a great film. I think it's a fun outing. Shut up and let the Florkins eat you, Doug.
Oh yeah, I mean, this film gets so much guff, and people seem to hate it. It's like, I like it better than Ant-Man Quantumania. I had a lot more fun watching this. It's like, I recognize it's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but they did some fun things with it. It's, the characters are enjoyable. I definitely wanted to follow up with Miss Marvel. And it's at least I've seen all the stuff. And of course, after watching Secret Invasion, this was a much welcome sigh of relief. Because
Fury is back. I don't know what
Fury
happened
is
to
back.
him in
Fury is who we've basically known him to be, instead of the old man that everybody's like, oh, you lost your touch. It's like, no. Secret Invasion didn't happen. They don't, they have freaking scrolls in it, but they don't mention anything about the events of Secret Invasion. So, yeah, it might as well have not happened. Go about your business. They don't even...
I only saw one episode. I
have
noped
Fury's
out of
wife
Secret
in
Invasion.
But, yeah. No, this was a lot of fun. Like you said, the Bollywood planet was fun. I love seeing, the three Marvel characters interacting, finally following up on WandaVision and getting, Monica Rambeau involved in it. And of course, the teaser for the X-Men being brought in to the MCU finally at the end. The villain, much like you said, it's like... Yeah, she has every right to be angry and upset about everything, but it's then she takes it too far. It's like, come on, this is resolved. This can be resolved. We're willing to work with you. Why do you have to be a douche about it? Now I can't even root for you anymore.
Yeah. So there's small problems, but I don't think they really hurt the whole. Before I bring it over to Kat, end credit scene with Beast, I kind of squeed because I really like how they handled that and how her mother is an X-Man. They do some pretty cool stuff there. The effect work on Beast is great. And I love that Kamala takes the file and becomes the new Fury and goes to see Kate Bishop, and she's like, I'm forming a team. Would you want in? Please? I love it. Although that means you have to have known who this person is. Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, that's one thing I'll definitely say for the Marvels that kind of works against it. You had to have done your homework, and I mean major homework. There are some superhero films which you can kind of jump into without knowing full-on backstory. It helps, but, say Black Panther or Ant-Man or something, you can kind of watch it for what it is. But the Marvels, it's impossible to do that, because there's all these backstories for the three main characters that you get some context to, but not a lot. It's better to have watched their main properties before getting into this. So I can see that being intimidating for some fans who aren't willing to watch everything, especially the streaming stuff. But that aside, like Doug said, I thought this was a very fun movie. Because they could have easily had it so that, they were fighting all the time, or it took, or they, were all opposites and they clashed a lot, and it took something extreme for them to get along. But no, they actually do manage to get along pretty decent out the bat. And I mean, granted, Monica still has her hang-ups, with Carol for obvious reasons, but they get through it. And, they learn to work as a unit. They train with each other to overcome the issue with them switching places when using their powers. And not only that, but we get to see them travel places, go to that planet and everything. We get to see different aliens. Granted, we see that with, properties like Guardian of the Galaxy, but it's nice to see it, here too, that, Earth is still a part of the vast galaxy, and that there are other species that could come to Earth too. The Bollywood planet is still my favorite, absolutely, and that prince is so hot. Oh my god,
Prince Yan! Oh my god,
I'd marry him too for political reasons.
I'm getting the vapors.
I mean, I'm gay as you can get, but he's I'm like.
And he's apparently a Korean pop star too, so it makes sense they would cast him to sing.
I love how her outfit changes when she goes to sing.
Yes, it's canon now. Captain Marvel is a Disney princess.
Yeah, she is a Disney princess, as is
funny
Drax.
And funny enough, this is the first time we've heard, like, Brie Larson sing in a while. Like, since the Scott Pilgrim movie. I think she was in another movie before that, which coincidentally she met up with someone from the Bollywood scenario. But the point is, you see that for the first time, and you're like, oh yeah, she can sing.
Yeah, it's just this is a fun film. I do want to applaud the action because I think some of the fights are better filmed than some previous MCU properties, especially the living room fight scene and stuff as they go on, because they're coordinating each character. I think it was really fun.
Yeah, I thought the fight choreography in this was really excellent. Especially coordinating between the three leads, because they all have vastly different styles of fighting, but they managed to make it work.
Seeing Kamala like squeeing over the fact that Fury was praising her fighting and that she gets to be an Avenger,
like her fangirling went like a little too much at times, but still, it's like it's keeping in character with her. So I'm like, I'll allow it.
I mean, I get it. Like, that's who she is. I think it's fine. It's it was just a lot of fun. Any other thoughts?
I will say I have some gripes, and you guys kind of mentioned some of them already. Like I said, the villain I felt was really boring and underwritten. Like, they just made her, stereotypical villain. It's like, on the one hand, she's justified in her hatred because, it's Captain Marvel's fault that her planet's dying. But on the other hand, even when she works to fix it, she's still hanging on to her grudge and just won't let it go. But she does nothing else really to make her memorable or anything. In fact, even when I was looking up the actress, the only thing noteworthy about her is that she's Tom Hiddleston's fiance. And you would think that,
Loki.
I know, and it's like, he even gave her hints about how to act as a Marvel villain, so you think she would have, run with that better and been a better villain, but nope. And then she's only one off because she gets killed at the end. So yeah, that was a disappointment.
She was one of the weaker villains of this phase. It was like, I understand her, but I don't like her.
Yeah, definitely not. There was the inclusion of Kamala's family, and don't get me wrong, I liked her family better by the end of the Miss Marvel series. Like, I hated them in the beginning because of how judgmental they were about, conventions and cosplayers and stuff. But by the end, they came around and then they accepted her and everything. And they supported her superhero lifestyle. So I'm like, okay, fine. I like them now. It's just, I felt like they were a bit superfluous. It's like, yeah, they were there for kind of comic relief, but they didn't really do much. It's like, you bring them all the way up to the spaceship, but what are they really going to do? It's not like any of them are really particularly skilled in, science or technology or anything like that. They're just kind of there to...
probably for safety, just in case something happened. Although
they were trying to
evacuate
them
purpose
from
in
the house.
Beginning was better. What's that?
They were trying to evacuate them from their house, so...
Right, but I'm saying they could have used some resources or gotten one of the many agencies to, house them while they dealt with the situation. It just felt like they put them in the line of fire here. And, I mean, I know they insisted on being there by virtue of, chaperoning Kamala, but even then, it just, I don't know. I feel like they could have had better reason for being there, personally.
I do agree there. I do think, though, that, some of the stuff with them is amazing. Like, is Captain Marvel pressuring you? I love their reactions to everything. They're not fazed by a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they do live in the MCU. They've probably seen a lot of weird shit by this point, so, it's understandable. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, this pissed me off a lot because I actually did watch all of Secret Invasion, and the whole, main conflict is that the Skrulls cannot live comfortably among humans because of what they are. And because of that, a whole terrorist group pops up that is trying to destroy the humans so they can embody them, take over the planet for themselves. Obviously, it doesn't work, but by the end, the humans are now aware of their existence and are now hunting them. And all of a sudden, Miss Marvel the Marvels comes along, and they're like, well, what do we do with these scrolls we just saved? Enter Valkyrie, and she's like, oh, you guys can join us over in new Asgard. You know, you'll fit right in with us, and we'll protect you. And I'm like, why wasn't this a solution in the first place?
Because Secret Invasion was a bad comic and is an even worse series.
Clearly, because I'm like, this whole time, we could have just had the Skrulls live with the Asgardians. Because, I mean, clearly the humans don't have an issue with Asgard setting up base on their home planet. I mean, they're far enough north where I guess they don't bother anybody. I know they have, like, legal issues once in a while. We saw it in She-Hulk. But for the most part, the humans tolerate their existence by virtue of them, you know, being Thor's people. So it's like, now we have this whole issue with the Skrulls for no real reason. We could have just put them next to the Asgardians and everything would have been fine. It's like, why did the whole Secret Invasion thing have to happen if that was
Secret
the easy
Invasion
solution?
is dumb and they should feel dumb. We need the Asgardians of the galaxy to fix this.
Yeah, I just like to pretend that series doesn't exist now, because I feel like it's not going to be relevant at all in regards to what's going to happen in the future by this point. So let's pretend it never happened.
Let's go past
what
this
never
part.
happened.
Never play this again. Anything to add?
I like the Spaceballs jokes that came because of this movie. Because that basically is the villain's motivation. I'm going to steal the air from other planets and the other resources for ourselves.
It's a Mega Mage. He's gone from suck to below.
Suck.
Yes, Secret Invasion does suck.
I do like that they effectively saved the planets afterwards. They do show that, like, oh yeah, they're getting back to normal. I'm like, I don't know how, but okay.
Happy endings all around.
All right, moving on to the final thing today. The 10th film. Thankfully, we're only at 2.5 hours in. It's not that long. It's okay. I'm fine. We're all good here.
Yep.
I'm wiggling in my seat.
I don't mind ranting when it's Disney films. Speaking of rants, the last film that came out was Wish. I have this at number 9. I didn't like
number
this
9.
One.
Number 9.
This is a nothing film, and it's like, this could have been so much better. They got one of the Chris's. What am I?
Chris Pine.
Chris Pine. They got Chris Pine as the villain, and he has one of the best songs in the movie. They got like a really interesting premise of like a city where people are allowed to wish and whatnot, and there's some good ideas, but so much is this is just a nothing film. Like, I only like half the songs, and the first half was really underwhelming for me. I don't really get anything from the characters. And what really pissed me off, I know a lot of people bring up the fact that Disney likes to insert Easter eggs everywhere. I didn't really care too much for it in Pinocchio, but it wasn't that bad. Here, this movie is a reference. Like, there's so much. And yes, it's for Disney's 100th, but for the 100th, you'd think it'd be a better film. But no, instead we have characters that represent the 7 dwarves and a reference to the magic mirror. And it's so bland. Like, you have a lot of it really bland, and then the star shows up, and suddenly you have talking flowers and singing, rapping animals, and a chicken breakdances. There's a chicken breakdancing, and now I want to kick a chicken again. It brings me full circle back to the original
They didn't reference the
Disney
reluctant
debate.
dragon.
Yeah, this is worse than the reluctant dragon. This makes me want to kick the breakdance chicken.
Oh man,
Cat.
This is the living embodiment of that Facebook meme where the person says, "So I made this bot watch 100 hours of this film, and this is the script they gave me." This is what happens when you make an AI bot watch hundreds of hours of Disney films and come up with a script for their 100th anniversary.
Ah, yes, Gotham.
And it's like I've heard this was around the time when they were starting to consider AI and the writer's strike. It hasn't been confirmed. I've had people when I was live tweeting say, "Oh no, it's not been confirmed," but it feels like it's written by AI.
Yeah, it really does. 'Cause, like, I just don't. It feels like on the one hand they're trying to pay tribute to a lot of their past, but at the same time they're changing stuff that is essential for the cliches they're trying to reference. Because I mentioned this to you before, but there was originally a different script for Wish, which followed more closely to the cliches we know. Like, for instance, Magnifico, the bad guy, he was supposed to be Asha's father. And both him and his wife, the queen, they were the bad guys of this film. And Asha was actually a princess. And she makes her wish, and she meets the star, but he's actually like, a humanoid, like, magical boy. And they actually have a romance. And this would have been, our first, like, Disney romance, not counting Pixar. This is, like, our first one since, God, what was the last one? Like, Tangled or something? Yeah, but they, for whatever reason, totally scrapped that. And instead we got this. We got a girl who wants to learn magic, even though she has no proficiency in it whatsoever. We have a bad guy who wants to guard wishes for no undiscernible reason other than, this bad thing happened in my past that I'm never going to elaborate on, and then automatically make him evil within 5 minutes.
Yeah, he's used evil magic, which means there's no saving him. It's the crusty evil button.
And then this all becomes about, freeing the wishes and giving the people back their wishes, even though they were living rather contently without them this whole time. And then suddenly making them rebel against the king, even though they loved him, like, less than 24 hours ago. And let's just sprinkle, like, a bunch of Easter eggs in between, because, that was in the past movies. Even though they don't make much sense here, we're gonna reference them regardless.
And a talking goat!
Yeah, let's just add a talking animal, because, that's another cliche Disney likes to do. But let's make him sound like a man with a deep, manly voice, even though he's only a 3-week-old goat. Don't get me wrong, I love Alan Tudyk. I just feel like he's out of place here, and they don't utilize him to his, like, full comedic capacity.
Yeah, there's a lot of out-of-place things, and I think the biggest thing for me, now that you bring up how this was supposed to be, the biggest jarring thing, when she first meets Magnifico, she, like, wants to see the wishes, and, like, it just randomly breaks into song, and yeah, it's a musical, but, like, the cut between his normal voice and singing voice is jarring, and I'm like, it almost feels like they got something different, but no Chris Pine singing, okay. And then you brought up that, like, that song was originally supposed to be sung by Star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you actually pay attention to the lyrics of the song, in different contexts, it's supposed to be a romantic duet. Because that's what this originally was. Like I said, Asha and the Starboy were supposed to be a couple, and this was their romantic number together. But once they scrapped that, they're like, well, shit, we still have this song. We still need to use it because we need to fill out the song count. Let's just make it between the hero and villain, like what we did in Frozen, but let's change the context around so it doesn't sound as romantic, even though it still kind of does. So
it's a very weird moment in the film. It was where I started to see things kind of going downhill, because the start was okay, and then this song, and, like, there's some stuff that I was just, like, iffy about. And then the rapping animals happened. It's just, like, it starts off generic, and then weird, and then it goes back to generic and weird, and it's like, there are certain things that I love. Chris Pine's song, This Is the Thanks I Get, is a banger to me. I think it's one of the best songs.
It's one of the better songs in the film.
I let you live here for free, and I don't even charge you rent.
Yeah, that was a bad line. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's one of the better songs in the film. It doesn't make sense context-wise, given that, people love him up to a certain point in the film. But I would not put it on par with other classic Disney songs.
It's not the best Disney song, but like it's the best of the film. And then the anthem near the fight anthem, I forget the name of the song, where like they're all like,
What I Know Now.
What I Know Now. That's really good too. It's just the problem is like the framing and the context.
Again, that's the big problem. These songs were obviously made for a story that goes differently than what they ended up with, and they're trying to force it into places where the context doesn't make sense. Because, like, this is supposed to be like a rally song, something that will, like, get people to stand up. Like, think of Seize the Day in Newsies. Like, that's the type of song it's supposed to be, but it's like, why are we doing this? Like, you guys loved Magnifico up to a certain point. It's not like he's been oppressing you guys or acting cruel or anything. It's like, yeah, he's been keeping people's wishes without the intention to grant them, but again, his justification, like, makes sense to a degree, depending on the wish. Because, again, how many films and TV shows and books have we read where, people didn't, where people didn't think fully about what they were wishing for, and it blew up to, like, catastrophic proportions. Heck, the Fairly Odd Parents series is all about that.
Or Wacko's Wish.
Which one?
Wacko's Wish from Animaniacs.
Well, yeah, that was a small example, but they were doing that mostly to mess with the guy to buy time. That wasn't the lesson of the film, though. It's not like Fairly Odd Parents, where every single episode...
Like, you gotta be very specific. If you wish for $1 million, you're gonna get stampeded.
No, right. I get that. I'm just saying that wasn't the lesson of it. And that's what I thought this film was going to be about. It's that the reason he's hoarding the wishes is because he, his kingdom was destroyed by somebody who made it a reckless wish, and it, blew up and got people killed or something. We never find that out for certain.
We get nothing from that.
Yeah, so again, it doesn't make sense for this rally song to be in there. It's, well sung and well written, but again, it doesn't make sense. None of it does. Like, we don't have any uprising against him until the very climax of the film.
And then there's the stuff where, like, when he's stopped, he's put in a mirror, and you briefly see the magic mirror's face, and, like, why?
Yeah, because, like, this whole thing... Yeah, because, like, the whole thing's supposed to be like, oh, this is how the magic mirror came about, or this is how the fairy godmother came about, but it doesn't make any sense. And then I'm left wondering if, like, his wife, the queen, became the evil queen from Snow White. Because,
Yeah, because we have the 7 dwarves, and, like, then we have... There's all these little references like that, and, like, hey, Peter Pan's here, and, like, it's... Hey, we have this character who's very bad at magic, but she's gonna be your fairy godmother now, just because. I'm like... Doug, take over. I can't.
Yeah, no. The reason this isn't at the very bottom is because when I did see the movie, I did, like, very kind of and slightly enjoy it. But then went home and saw all the YouTube videos, and I'm like, oh god, no, what was I thinking? And then, yeah, it's like there's all the Easter eggs, but a lot doesn't make sense. It's like they're supposed to be the 7 dwarves, but they're not actually dwarves. And so they're not all male either. It's like, how I wouldn't have gotten that at all. Just like, they have the personalities, I guess. But yeah, it's like I said, it's mostly Easter eggs. They went way safe with this thing, and it could have been a lot better. The, like, animation's interesting, a bit jarring at times, but okay.
It feels unfinished in terms of animation. It
does. It very feels unfinished. Like, I get, at least they were going for, like, that storybook motif for it, and it was nice to see, like, the old opening of the Disney films where it's like a book opening. That's cool. But it's like, yeah, a lot of the other stuff, it just gives you a headache. It's like, just from the start, it's like, this guy's collecting wishes. It's like, why, if you're not granting them, then why are you still keeping them? Why don't you just give them back and you don't grant them? But it's like, you're basically becoming, the thing that you were against, because you're afraid that they're going to use whatever against you. But it's like, if it's just their wish in their heart, then, then they can't really do anything unless, like they say at the end, I'll make it happen. But he doesn't know that that's a possibility. But so he's just paranoid.
He's gone mad with power. Have you ever tried going mad without power?
But it's like, then why are you hoarding the wishes then? If it's like, that's the thing about, like, it feels like you would want to, use them for their power and stuff. But in the beginning, he's not really interested in the power that they hold. He wants to keep them safe, whatever that means.
Yeah. Even though the entire reason these people are handing their wishes over is because they feel they don't have the capacity to make them come true. So if that's the case, just give the wishes back, because obviously they're not going to make them happen on their own. Problem solved. Like, you're really hoarding them for no reason other than to give you a reason to turn evil later.
It's like,
it makes no sense.
If you think that the wish is too vague, then it's immediately a threat. It's just instant paranoia. It's like, I feel like they could have kind of leaned into that a little more versus what they actually did with having him get corrupted, which just felt just out of nowhere. Just because he feels threatened. That's all that it is. It's like, it's not some power grab. And like Kat says, I think it would have made a lot more sense if they were just evil to start with, and, they didn't get corrupted. They already were corrupt. And then this star comes in.
And then couple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we could have had our first villain couple ever.
Exactly. But no, it's just, there's a lot of wasted opportunity, and they just went safe, and then there's like a lot of stuff there that they don't even really do anything with. I can't. I don't feel much for this.
This was a hard movie to watch. Like, I kept having to stop. And it's like, at first I'm just like, I was bored. And then I was saying what the fuck a lot, especially the breakdancing chicken. But then I was saying what the fuck instead of like things
what the
being
cluck?
So what the cluck? Instead of being out there, like, after a while it's just like, this doesn't make no sense. Especially the sleepy one ratting them out. Like, why? Off screen.
I mean, I get he wanted to get his wish granted because, he basically felt like a piece of his soul was missing by virtue of his wish being taken, but that was still kind of a dick thing to do, especially since, for no reason, Magnifico ends up, like, brainwashing him to obey him. It's like, the guy would have done it regardless, and you could have just threatened to take his wish back again if he didn't comply. It just felt unnecessary.
Yeah, there's a lot about this film that I did not like.
And I really wanted this to, like, be good, too. Because, like, how often do we get an original concept from Disney that's not derivative of an existing story or movie? And this is the best they could do? Like, really? Like, you guys really lost your touch. Big time.
This is your 100th anniversary film.
Like, for fuck's sake, that short they released of, like, them in the studios, that was more faithful than this movie was in regards to, promoting their 100 year. Just, oh, God.
It only skipped being my last because Ant-Man made me more upset. But, like, this was... It was neck and neck, and I haven't reviewed Ant-Man because I don't want to have to see that again.
Yeah, not till we get to it in the Marvel Initiative.
Yeah, one thing that I'm probably going to do on my own part, since I started doing Letterboxd reviews, I'm probably going to eventually go back and rewatch the old films and give updated thoughts. Even The Reluctant Dragon. But right now, Wish is the new Kick a Chicken movie.
Take a breakdancing chicken.
Oh, God.
I mean, not the first time we've had dancing animals in a Disney film.
Yeah, but breakdancing... I mean, like, I didn't like Home on the Range, but this is a step too far.
At least it's not a rapping dog.
We had Rapping Turtle! It was a party time with the flowers and the turtles. I don't...
Just remember, there is always something more cringe out there. Remember the swamp.
Remember the swamp where we went womp chicka womp womp. With that being said, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Doug McBerry.
And those were our top 10 films of 2023. Obviously, Phil is going to edit in our rankings and stuff as we go. But if you want to see anything in the future, you can always check us out at our Facebook page. Although Facebook is kind of going downhill. So I have created a Blue Sky and a Letterboxd account for the Bun Squad. You can follow me there and see my opinions on stuff as Twitter and Facebook go down the drain. With that being said, have a good one, everyone. Watch Guardians, The Marvels, and Haunting in Venice. I think those are the three that really stuck with me the most. And Elementals. Elemental was good, but like the rest, this was a rough year. Next year we don't have as much. We only have 4 films that we know of. I'm going to be starting to watch them as we go. But just remember, if it's your 100th anniversary, put some damn effort into your stupid movie.
Mm-hmm. And if I had only one request for the movies of 2024, it would be this. So I look up the reviews to guide us and throw caution to every warning sign. I'm sure there will be bad films that will find us, but we will watch them all one at a time. So I make this wish to watch something good better than this. So I make this wish to watch something good better than this. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, yeah, yeah. Not like this, oh no, no, no. So I make this wish to watch something good better than this.